Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Was a Fairy of Fire and Water? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. The early morning sun had just begun to rise over the towering city blocks and skyscrapers of the bustling coastal city of Gardenia, the shining light adding to the already soaring temperatures that are associated with midsummer. The air was visible, radiating off surfaces like pavements or roads. Those who dared to be out and about in such sweltering heat went about their journeys quickly, hoping to get away from the burning sun and into the sweet, cool embrace of air conditioners. For those inside, air conditioners were already blowing at full speed to compensate for the hot air blanketing the environment, be it in offices, schools, shops, or homes. Inside a bedroom in a townhouse at 10922 Palmer Road, it was no exception. The air conditioner blasted away in a room that was in a state of organized chaos. Piles of paper and books filled the two desks, one with a laptop and the other art sketches. More sketches and other papers dotted the notice board hanging on the wall. Books stood haphazardly against one another along a bookshelf, several more lying scattered across the room among other random items of unknown origin. Against a wall that was lined with even more sketches and the occasional poster, was a single bed with the owner of the room sleeping soundly, impervious to the world that was already on the move outside. By the foot of the bed, in a basket filled with cushions, was her pet rabbit, also sleeping soundly and dreaming of carrots. The only sounds came from both the sleeping individual and her rabbit, release of breath and light snores. Sadly, the peaceful undertone was broken by the sudden blaring of an alarm clock sitting by a bedside table. The rabbit was rudely startled from his slumber, tumbling out of his basket in a heap with a loud yelp. The sleeping form on the bed stirred, then groaned at the incessant ringing echoing around the room. From the covers, a hand reached out, fumbled for the godforsaken thing, and silenced it. Sleep permanently swept away, the bed shifted. The form mumbled incoherently, pushing down the sheets and sitting up. Long, orange-red hair tousled up and sticking out in all directions from the movements of slumber, 16-year-old Bloom Davis emerged into the new day, yawning loudly and rubbing her eyes. She stoned for a few moments, letting her sleep-addled brain slowly power up. Her rabbit bounded up to her bedside, tugging the sheets. "Good morning, Kiko." The rabbit waved his front paws and hopped about. Yeah, I know. Let's get you breakfast." Bloom pushed the sheets aside. Slipping on her bedroom slippers, she got up from her bed. With Kiko leading the way, she shuffled out of the room, switching off the air conditioner as she went. "And for me too," she added with a yawn. Bloom would think that she had a pretty ordinary life. Sure, she was adopted, but that meant little in terms of how her life had progressed ever since her father found her in a burning building all those years ago. She had loving parents, her protective, sometimes embarrassing firefighter father Mike, and her kind, steadfast florist mother Vanessa. She went to a regular high school, made friends, dealt with boring teachers and enemies, sat through equally boring lessons except for art, which was her favorite, and getting caught up in the drama one would associate with teenage hormones and hallway gossip. So yeah, Bloom had a pretty ordinary life. One that was admittedly dull. Bloom couldn't pinpoint where it started, but she yearned for adventure. Gardenia was her home world, and she wondered what it was like outside of it. In her childhood, stories of distant realms and lands fascinated her, and as she grew older, she often expressed her longing to travel the globe and explore what awaited in foreign countries. Alas, mostly due to the overprotective nature of her father, Bloom hardly ever ventured out of Gardenia, let alone leave the country, by herself. She knew it was with good intentions, but like every adventurous teenager stuck in a bird cage, she subconsciously felt melancholic and wishful for even a glimpse of freedom. This summer was no different. While all her friends were out of town hopping all over the world, she was stuck in Gardenia. Not as fun. Every morning had been more or less the same so far. Bloom shuffled down the stairs to the ground floor, where the smell of breakfast being made wafted through. Usually, her parents were the ones to prepare breakfast. Bloom wisely kept away from the kitchen, as nearly burning the house down in a massively botched attempt at cooking was an ordeal she nor her parents ever wanted to repeat again. "Good morning, Bloom," her mom smiled from the papers. "Morning," Bloom waved sleepily. "Morning, sweetheart," her dad called from the kitchen. "Morning to you, Dad." Bloom helped herself to a plate of scrambled eggs, bacon and toast already sitting on the island counter. Plopping herself down onto the dining table, she dug in sluggishly. Kiko rushed to his food bowl, filled with chopped carrots to his liking. "Bloom, dear," said her mom, "Sarah is unable to make it for the opening shift today due to a family emergency. I'll need your help covering for her until this afternoon, okay?" "Yes, Mom," the redhead replied half-heartedly. "Yep, a dull, boring life indeed. A whole universe and then some away, someone else is also just starting a new day." In a bedroom completely bedecked in posters, merchandise, and themed household items of the nation's #1 hero, 15-year-old Midoriya Izuku rose from his themed bedsheets, hand reaching over to his bedside table to silence his hero-themed alarm clock. He was a huge hero nerd, so sue him. Still not quite fully awake, Izuku slouched out of bed and shuffled his way out of the room. Making a pit stop in the bathroom to release the night's waste, he shuffled out into the living room where his mother Inko, a petite, somewhat chubby woman with long hair the same emerald green color as her son, was just placing the morning's breakfast of grilled fish, natto, miso soup and rice on the dining table. "Ohio, Izuku, did you sleep well?" "Ohio, Okasan," like a log. "Well, let's eat then." "Itadakimasu." Mother and son dug into their food. Izuku, in between bites, recounted the dream he had the night before, where the nation's #1 hero, All Might, had taken him on as his sidekick, and they went around saving people and the world from calamity and villains. Inko listened to it all with a fond smile. Even though her heart ached, Izuku was by far an ordinary teenage boy, which might not sound like something that was of great concern. But when 80% of the country had some kind of superpower or quirk, limitless to the imagination, and your son was part of the ever-shrinking 20% that didn't have a quirk, being ordinary was more akin to a curse, something that others reviled. And indeed, things haven't been smooth sailing for the Midoriya family. Inko remembered that fateful visit to the clinic, where the family doctor pronounced her son quirkless, extra toe joint and all. She remembered her son sitting by the computer, video of All Might's latest rescue playing, tears falling liberally as he asked her if he could still be a hero like him. She remembered hugging him tightly, her own tears falling as she apologized over and over as if it was her fault. Her husband seemed to think so, packing his things and storming out the moment the news broke. The divorce was done within days. On her own, Inko struggled to keep herself and Izuku afloat, taking on more shifts at the hospital she worked at to cover the expenses. She couldn't be there for her son all the time, but she had faith in Izuku to keep himself safe, even with his hero-watching obsession. If there was one thing that made Inko smile in this darkness, it was her son's love for heroes, especially All Might. Izuku's room reflected that, his mountain of notebooks of hero analysis laid its testament, and his habit of spectating hero versus villain fights. It might have been compensation for his lack of quirk, but in Inko's mind, if her son was happy, so was she. "I gotta head out first, Okasan, there might be another hero fight on the way to school," said Izuku, putting down his chopsticks. Inko smiled genially. "Stay safe, Izuku." "I will." Bloom bid farewell to their latest customer, a slightly senile old woman who loved to regale her life stories to just about anyone who would listen, which honestly, was just herself. The stories might have been repeated over and over like a broken record, but Bloom didn't find it in her nature to snub the old woman. It was common courtesy, after all. Releasing a sigh, she grabbed a cloth from the counter to wipe the shelves, careful not to knock over any of the potted flowering plants on display. Busy with her task, Bloom almost didn't hear the door opening with the bell tinkling. "Welcome to Dash." Her greeting died the moment she realized who had just stepped into the shop. Someone whom she would snub any day. Her school's resident diva, spoiled rich girl and neighbor, Mitzi. "Well, look who it is, the loser." God give me strength, Bloom groaned, before forcing politeness into her words. Can I help you, Mitzi? The black-haired, bespectacled brat snorted. Oh, it's nothing. I just happened to see you outside from my brand new scooter. She pointed at the shiny, purple vehicle with her thumb, and I just thought I'd check in on how the resident loser is doing, working away her summer holidays, just before I fly off to Hawaii for the next 2 weeks. Bloom's patience was beginning to wear thin. And are you interested in buying anything? Buying? Mitzi scoffed. As if I'd buy anything from this dump. I know of better places, not like this hovel your mother runs. Bloom's patience snapped. Well then, can you kindly get the F out of here, you snobbish beach? Storming forward, Bloom grabbed Mitzi by the shoulders. Ignoring her squeals of indignation, Bloom bodily pushed her out of the shop, taking pleasure in watching the beach stumble onto the sidewalk. Before she could retaliate, Bloom slammed the door shut, locking it. Mitzi was at the door in seconds, pounding it and screaming wildly. Bloom ignored her, going back to her previous task. Mitzi would eventually stomp away after several moments of futile effort and the weird looks she was getting from other passers-by, hopping onto her scooter and driving away. Who was that? Bloom turned, her mom just coming out of the back room with pots in hand. Mitzi, who else? Vanessa's eyes immediately hardened. Did she cause trouble for you? A little bit, but it was just her normal snobbery, Bloom replied, going back to the shelf, and I pushed her out when she wasn't intending to buy anything. A smile graced Vanessa's lips. Good for you, Bloom, to not let anyone take advantage of you. Now, why don't you finish up with the dusting, then you can go off. Derek's supposed to come by soon. Gee, thanks, Mom. Bloom cheered, mood picking up instantly. Izuku certainly wished he had the strength to stand up for himself. But that was almost impossible when faced with a bully with a powerful quirk and his lackeys. Said lackeys had him in arm locks, preventing him from moving an inch. The bully, Bokugu Katsuki, had his latest hero analysis notebook in his hands, sneering at the thing as if it had insulted his mother. How ironic was it that Katsuki was once Izuku's childhood friend and playmate? Ah, but that was before Katsuki got his quirk, explosion, and Izuku's diagnosis of being quirkless. Much like the rest of society would have done, Katsuki turned on him right off the bat. What followed was 10 years of bullying, intimidation, injury, and insults. All heaped onto Izuku's soul that lived through each day bruised and beaten. And today was no exception. Hero Analysis Volume 13? Katsuki laughed. Deku, you think you get anywhere with stalking heroes like some kind of freakish creep? The lackeys laugh. Kaken. You just don't get it, don't you, useless Deku, Katsuki scorned him. Nothing. Just a quirkless freak who gets in the way. You think you can be a hero without a FING quirk? Well, Izuku watched in horror as the blonde exploded his notebook, charring it completely. You should just give up and stay down. Katsuki tossed the destroyed notebook away. Izuku watched it fly out the open window. Let's go, extras, he isn't FNG worth it, the blonde turned on his heel. The lackeys throw Izuku to the side. He crashed into a desk, hitting his head against the edge as he fell. Izuku's body had just landed on the floor when Katsuki, at the doorway, glanced back towards him. You know what? I just had a FNG great idea. If you're so desperate to be a hero, useless Deku. Izuku was in too much pain to get up, but he heard everything, especially what was said next. Pray that you will be born with a quirk in your next life, and take a swan dive off the roof. The green-haired boy said nothing, even when his tormentor stomped off and slammed the door shut behind him. Alone, with blood seeping from a cut on his temple, Izuku quietly caved, tears falling rapidly. His weeps echoed in the empty classroom. If there was one thing Bloom appreciated about traveling on her bike, was the wind blowing through her hair as she sped down the road. Kiko also seemed to enjoy it too, sticking his head up from the front basket and letting the passing wind blow his ears backwards. Sure, the current wind was searing hot thanks to the burning temperatures, but Bloom would take whatever she could. Also, the place she was going to now that she was free from shop duties had plenty of shade. Gardenia's park was smack dab in the middle of the city, expansive in size, and full of trees. So tight was the foliage in some areas of the park that sunlight barely managed to seep through the gaps. It was much cooler as a result, and it was the best place for Kiko to run about and get exercise. Cycling through the gates, Bloom sighed with relief as the sun disappeared behind the tree branches, the cooler temperatures embracing her sweat-lined clothes and body. There were a couple of other park-goers going about their own business whom she passed, but paid little attention to. She just wanted a quiet corner for herself and Kiko. Turning around a bend, she found the perfect spot. A wooded area, still close enough to the path but far enough from the main hub of human activity to be fairly isolated and quiet. Stopping her bike, Bloom picked Kiko up from the basket and placed him onto the grass. He sniffed around for a bit, before bounding off deeper into the trees. Resting her bike against a large oak, Bloom sat down and leaned back onto the trunk. Opening her bag, she pulled out a book on mythological creatures and a container of peaches. Opening to the bookmarked page, Bloom bit into her first peach. Hopefully she'll get a spark of inspiration from reading. It has been a while since she last picked up her pencil. Hopefully her art skills hadn't rusted over yet. Finishing her peach, Bloom had just reached for the second one, when Kiko came running back, screeching loudly. "HM? Is something wrong?" The rabbit tugged at her breathed leg in a right tizzy. "Did you see a dead animal again?" The last time Kiko had been so frantic was when he stumbled upon the freshly dead corpse of a pigeon in the same park. Bloom had it buried as a sign of respect. Kiko seemed to shake his head, tugging her breathed leg a bit more before bounding off again, as if trying to get her to follow him. Bloom eventually got up, placed her book down, and hurried after him. She didn't want to lose him in the thicket of trees, after all. The deeper she went, the closer the trees appeared to converge. It was quite dim, leaving Bloom to squint her eyes to see where Kiko was going. She didn't know how far in she had gone, but she showed no sign of stopping. Until, in the distance, there was a flash of light and a human shout. Momentarily startled, Bloom hurried on. Kiko was standing by a tree in front of a clearing, waving his front paws in urgency. Reaching the tree, Bloom peered into the clearing from behind it. She couldn't believe her eyes at what she saw. "What the? Can a quirkless person like me become a hero like you?" So much had happened to Izuku after he managed to pick himself up and retrieve his destroyed notebook from the school's koi pond, where it had landed. With a broken heart and spirit, he trudged his way home, only to get attacked by a villain made completely out of slime in an underpass. But just as he was about to drown and become a morbid host for the villain, All Might, of all people, showed up and blasted the villain away with one terrifying punch. Naturally, as any fan of the nation's #1 hero would, Izuku had so many questions. But All Might had little time and had to leave. So the green-haired boy did what any crazed fan would do when their idol was about to take off into the air. Grab onto the man's leg and fly up into the stratosphere, clinging on for dear life. Realizing Izuku's foolish move, All Might was forced to land on the roof of an office building downtown. Scolding the boy for his reckless act, the number hero coughed, and proceeded to give the boy a heart attack by seemingly exploding into a cloud of smoke, leaving behind a bony, emaciated figure in its wake. After calming the frantic Izuku down and proving he was actually All Might, the skeletal man, Toshinori Yagi, told him about his current state, and the villain that caused the grievous injury to his side that shortened his time as All Might per day. Toshinori wanted to leave it at that, and was already heading towards the stairs, when Izuku asked that fateful question. Izuku had to know. Surely his childhood idol, whom he revered from the moment he could walk and talk, the symbol of peace, would have the answer to the question that has been the only source of light in the darkness that his life has been ever since he was 4. Right? Toshinori had an answer, and it was the straw that broke the camel's back. "I'm sorry, kiddo, you can't be a hero without a quirk." Izuku's world cracked. "You should be realistic. Being a police officer is noble too. Splintered? Or a doctor, you get to save lives that way as well. Fractured? All I'm saying, my boy, is that you need to give up this dangerous dream before you get hurt." And finally shattered. Izuku was stock still, almost catatonic. He barely heard the rooftop door close behind the skeletal form of the symbol of peace, nor did he completely register his legs giving out on him, sending him crumpling to the floor. For the second time that day, tears fell liberally from his eyes. But his sobs were much louder. Again, he was all alone. No one to hear his cries of despair. The world continued moving, impervious to his distress, impervious to the tatters of his dream destroyed by the man he idolized, impervious to him. He was, after all, in everyone's eyes, a quirkless, useless Deku. Sometime later, he didn't know how long, the tears stopped flowing and the sobs quietened. Izuku picked himself up from the floor, stood for a moment, and began walking towards the railing at the edge of the roof, where virtually nothing separated it from the long drop to the sidewalk below. Izuku reached the railing and looked down. For some people, looking straight down from a great height is dizzying and downright terrifying. But for Izuku, he felt nothing. So broken he was, so lost in catatonia, that all fear and inhibition had drained away with his tears. He was a shell, hollow, empty of purpose, empty of life. Izuku put one foot on the railing and then the other. With a quick hoist, he was sitting on the railing, teetering over the precipice. There he sat, in perfect equilibrium. Izuku took a breath and pushed himself off the railing. Everything seemed to slow down at first. The initial feeling of weightlessness, the single moment he was airborne, before gravity took its hold and the fall sped up. The wind howled in Izuku's ears, his body twisting, turning and tumbling in his descent towards the awaiting ground, growing closer and closer with each second. Everything was spinning. He couldn't differentiate up from down, right from left. He also couldn't tell if he was also hearing the screams of people watching him fall. It was all one huge roar of noise, completely indecipherable. A roar that seemed to get louder and louder, until it almost deafened him. Until, a flash of white light, the roar ending abruptly, and the world disappeared. Bloom was sure she was dreaming. She had to be. Because there was no way, in this life or the next, that what was happening in front of her in the clearing could even be remotely real. It simply was not possible. Or maybe, she had somehow stumbled into the set of a movie being filmed. Yes, that must be it. Just a movie scene being filmed about a female protagonist fighting a massive ogre with yellow skin in maroon overalls and a small army of ghoul-like creatures. The ogre and the ghouls looked so realistic, but Bloom chalked it up to excellent costuming, makeup and animatronics. But then, where were the other components that made up the filming set? The cameras? The lights? The sound equipment? The director and the crew? Something wasn't right here. And animatronics were not supposed to move, jump and leap so freely as if they have a will of their own. Bloom eyed the actress. She had long blonde hair tied into twin pigtails, lightly tanned skin that was littered with bruises, cuts and scrapes, dressed in an orange sleeveless CRP top and low-cut shorts with matching knee-high heeled boots, all sparkling with an almost obscene amount of glitter that it hurt Bloom's eyes to stare for too long. She had sky-blue bands around her wrists and a matching headband. There were a pair of three-pointed appendages protruding from her upper back. Bloom squinted. They looked like wings that she had seen in drawings of fairies. The blonde was also holding a large scepter that had sun motif circle at the end. Get the F back. Bloom watched in surprise as the scepter glowed, and a blast of yellow light shot out from the end of it. The light hit one of the advancing ghouls, flinging it backwards into a tree. There was the distinct sound of bones cracking upon impact. Okay, something was definitely up here. Man-made props weren't supposed to shoot beams of light. And animatronics were supposed to be made of metal that withstood heavy impact, not of bone that cracked under much lighter force. Bloom instinctively reached for her phone in her pocket. Maybe the police could come and sort this out. After all, real or not those ghoul-like creatures were, the blonde girl looked like she needed assistance, even though she was doing a good job keeping the little monsters at bay. But instead of feeling the sleek shape of her smartphone, Bloom only felt the empty texture of her jeans pocket. Damn it. Now she remembered. She left her phone in her bag that she had placed on her bicycle basket. All right, Bloom, calm down, she thought to herself. Don't make any noises. Just quietly get back to my bicycle and call the police. Don't let any of them see you. As quietly as she could, Bloom crept away from the clearing, taking a quivering Kiko with her. She only made it a few steps when the blonde girl spoke again. The power of Solaria will never fall to your putrid hands. Solaria? Bloom blinked at this. She didn't recognize the word, though it sounded like the name of a fantasy realm from a mobile game. Her musings were interrupted when the ogre roared. We'll see about that, princess. The ogre broke into a run, barreling straight towards the blonde. For such an overweight, lumbering figure, he could run really fast, thought Bloom in surprise. Similarly, the blonde girl did not expect such breakneck speed from the ogre. The split-second distraction proved costly. She did not see the incoming fist until it was too late. Bloom gasped quietly as the punch sent the blonde girl flying backwards, landing painfully on the ground with a loud thud, the scepter flying out of her hands. Get her, the ogre ordered. The small ghouls screeched wildly, charging forwards and pouncing upon the downed girl like rapid lions on a gazelle, pinning down her arms and legs. The girl struggled, but the small creatures were deceptively strong, keeping her in place. Bloom felt her chest constrict. The girl was in deep trouble now. Get off of me, you freaks! Smiling triumphantly, the ogre stomped forward and picked up the fallen scepter. He towered over the restrained blonde, laughing uproariously. Your time's up, princess. The scepter is mine now. Bloom didn't know how she did what she did next. Her rational mind was thrown into the back burner, as did the urge to flee back to her bicycle and hightail it out of there. All that was in her head was that she had to help the blonde girl somehow, before she was hurt even more. The redhead quickly looked about. She needed some sort of weapon. Heaven knows what would happen if she intervened empty-handed. Her eyes fell upon a few medium-sized rocks not too far away. Perfect. She went to pick them up and dashed into the clearing. Hey, leave her alone. The ogre whirled around at her voice, only to be brained by one of the rocks she threw. He stumbled back a few steps, but did not lose his grip on the scepter. I don't know who you fuckers are, but get the F away from her. Bloom shouted, throwing another rock. The ogre blocked the rock with a sturdy arm. Growling at this new menace, he roared, Ghouls, eliminate that puny earthling. A pack of 4 of those small creatures jumped from the restrained blonde and rushed towards Bloom. She only had 1 rock left, and she threw it with all her strength, hoping to catch all 4 at once. Unfortunately, the creatures were too fast, and the rocks sailed harmlessly away. Now without ammunition, Bloom found herself in trouble now. Her chest constricted further with growing panic. She looked around desperately, hoping for something that could be used as a weapon to fend off the advancing ghouls. But she found none. There was nothing she could use to protect herself from the coming danger. The ghouls were getting closer, claws and sharp teeth glinting in the afternoon sun. Bloom's heart was about to explode, her memories flashing before her eyes, her childhood growing up in Gardenia, going to school, her friends, her parents. Oh God, she was never going to see them again, wasn't she? She was going to die here at the hands of these monsters, and her parents will be none the wiser until the hours trickle into days and a search is carried out, but her body will never be found, destroyed by the ghouls that were now taking their leap at her. Acting purely on instinct, she threw out her hands, eyes shut tight, screaming, "Leave me alone." Midoriya knew he had been falling. That was the rule of physics. Gravity pulls everything down. Anything that started high up would fall straight down towards the first surface in its path. For him, it would have been the pavement, or perhaps some poor soul who had the unfortunate luck to be directly beneath him before impact. Either way, the outcome would have been messy and gory. But it never happened. Instead, the world rushing towards him seemed to blow apart in a flash of white light. And suddenly, as if he was in a car with the driver going full throttle on the accelerator, everything sped up. His body rushed past and through bursts of color and light that spread and receded in waves. Everything was shaking and spinning. He didn't know if he was falling straight or in any direction that was possible. Midoriya also heard screaming ringing his eardrums as he fell through the tumultuous void. It didn't take him long to realize that it was he who was screaming. He didn't know how long he had been falling for. He only knew something was happening to the void. The bursts of color and light were growing more erratic, the shaking and spinning growing more violent. It was as if the void was tearing itself apart. And it did. In one huge implosion, The void shattered in a flash of light. There was a huge roar as the wind reappeared and whipped around Midoriya's ears. The light faded, and a world came into view. Midoriya could see buildings of varying heights, and what looked like a large park directly beneath him. And he was falling towards the trees. Midoriya screamed louder. Bloom expected it to be futile. Throwing her hands out would do nothing to stop the incoming ghouls. She didn't expect the constriction in her chest to snap, nor the surge of searing hot energy that raced from her chest through every nerve right to her fingertips. Nor did she expect said searing hot energy to manifest as a roaring dragon made of fire, swirling around her and forming a shield. The leaping ghouls screeched the moment they hit the shield, disintegrating into ash in seconds. Bloom opened her eyes at the screeches. She immediately noticed the small pile of ash, just as the shield flickered and disappeared. She stumbled backwards, staring at her hands in shock. Did I just do that? Seeing two of their comrades reduced to cinders, the remaining ghouls holding the blonde girl down panicked, retreating behind the ogre lest they be next. For a moment, no one moved. Then came screaming that didn't belong to any one of them. In fact, it appeared to be coming from the sky. Bloom looked up and blanched. The screaming was coming from a person, hurtling down to the clearing, straight towards the ogre. Hey W-. She didn't get much further than that. The person hit the ogre's head with a loud shriek, bounced off, crushed an unlucky ghoul before rolling for several feet on the ground and coming to a stop. The ogre teetered dazedly for a moment, toppling backwards in a dead faint with an almighty crash, the scepter falling out of his grip. The remaining ghouls scattered into the trees, screeching wildly. Bloom was still frozen in shock, as was the blonde girl. It was only when the person started to groan painfully that she quickly sprung into action. Oh my God, are you all right? The redhead was at the person's side immediately. The blonde hesitated for a split second, going over to the unconscious ogre to take back her scepter, before hurrying over to the unknown person. Can you hear me? Are you able to respond? Bloom asked the person again. Bloom guessed they were male grimaced, his head lolling side to side slightly. His eyelids slowly lifted open, irises staring up at her blankly. Thank heavens, you're conscious. Bloom was tremendously relieved. Can you tell us your name? Midoriya. Izuku. Midoriya, are you in any serious pain? Does it hurt anywhere? He was silent for a moment, but he shook his head no. Midoriya tried to prop himself up, but he appeared to have some difficulty doing so. Bloom and the blonde girl quickly helped him up to his feet, holding him securely so that he didn't keel back down to the ground. Now standing at his full height, Bloom was able to get a good gauge of his appearance. He was about as tall as she was, had short green hair in a mess of curls, and emerald green irises. He was wearing a black gakurin and red high-top sneakers. Midoriya looked around half-dazedly. Where am I? You're in Gardenia, Bloom replied. This is the main city park. Gardenia. Midoriya stared blankly before his eyes widened. Wait, Gardenia? This isn't Muzutafu. Now it was Bloom's turn to be confused. Mu.su.tafu? Where exactly are you from, Midoriya? Japan. My name's Bloom. Bloom-san. Midoriya tested her name on his tongue. My home city is called Muzutafu. It's part of the capital Tokyo in Japan. But that's on the other side of the globe, said Bloom. Were you on a plane, Midoriya? You fell from the sky, so was there some accident? Are there any other survivors? Well, it's not quite like that. He scratched his cheek uncertainly. The blonde girl turned around at that moment and scowled. I hate to interrupt this unexpected investigation about how someone was able to survive a fall from a great height, but we've got company again. The ogre had regained consciousness. As he picked himself with a low growl, the ghouls that had run off were scampering back into the clearing. The blonde girl readied her scepter, standing firm despite showing signs of exhaustion. Bloom and Midoriya took refuge behind her. Bloom, if you can repeat what you just did, that would be great for all of us, she sighed in between breaths. But I don't know what that was. Bloom replied frantically. What do you mean you don't know what that was? The blonde asked incredulously. It's your powers, that's what it was. But I'm human. Bloom's protestations were interrupted when the ogre roared and charged towards them. The blonde girl swung her scepter down, shooting an arch of light that halted the ogre. Another slash of the scepter and a second wave of light threw the lumbering beast backwards into a posse of trees, the force strong enough to snap the trunks like rotten toothpicks. "That'll teach you to have your minions lay their filthy claws on me," she smirked, despite the waver in her voice. Unsure of how to summon that strange energy from earlier again, Bloom made use of a sturdy tree branch she managed to procure after it broke off from the tree she had kicked a ghoul into just moments before. She was able to whack another one of the ghouls into a rather jagged boulder, the impact destroying the creature's body in a splash of dark liquid. Midoriya was unsure of what was going on. One moment he was ending his life, then he was falling through some strange void, then he was spit out into this unfamiliar territory, and now he was fighting off these weird creatures with two strangers. He had so many questions, but he realized quite quickly now wasn't the time for asking. While the two strangers were busy fighting, none of them noticed a trio of ghouls approaching, headed straight for him. Like Bloom before him, Midoriya felt his chest constrict. He had no means of defending himself or the girls. He didn't have a quirk. He didn't have a weapon, real or improvised. He was powerless, completely useless. Unlike Bloom, no one would ever come to claim his body. He was alone in this unfamiliar world, just like the one he disappeared from. And he'll leave this world alone, with perhaps only the two girls to witness that. The three ghouls leapt for him. Midoriya shrieked, and crossed his arms over his face in a weak attempt to protect himself, unaware of something rupturing inside of him. A tsunami of energy raced to his arms, bursting forth in a spiraling geyser. A haunting trill of a phoenix melded with the sound of the rushing water, followed by the screeching of the ghouls as they were blasted away into a large tree, snuffed out like a candle extinguished. The immense force also snapped said tree's trunk clean in two, toppling it with a loud crash. Midoriya startled, breaking the flow of water. He stared at the broken, drenched bodies of the ghouls, then to his hands. Did that just happen? Was that his quirk? No, it can't be. He had the extra toe joint. He remembered the X-ray vividly from that fateful doctor's visit. It couldn't possibly be a quirk. Things just don't work like that. But then if it wasn't a quirk, what was it? A shriek interrupted his runaway train of thoughts. No one had noticed it, but a single ghoul had managed to stay clear of the fighting while its comrades were either driven back or obliterated. In the chaos, no one saw it creep towards Bloom, leap onto her leg, and bite down on it hard. Bloom bucked her leg wildly to throw the ghoul off. The blonde girl turned her scepter towards it, but Midoriya was faster. He grabbed the creature and yanked it off, tearing off a piece of Bloom's breed's leg with it. Rolling on the ground, the ghoul righted itself and fled to the safety of the ogre and its remaining comrades, the piece of fabric still in its mouth. A sickly magenta light enveloped the group of creatures. "You may have gotten lucky this time, princess. But next time, I'll be taking your scepter for sure," the ogre declared fiercely just as he and the ghouls faded into the light, which then dissipated with a crackle. "I would like to see you try again." The blonde girl made a rude face at the spot where the ogre once stood. Satisfied, she turned to Bloom and Midoriya, both staring blankly and unsure of how to comprehend what had just happened. "Well, I can't thank you both enough for coming to my aid. If my scepter was stolen, it would be Dash." The girl swayed on her feet, her voice abruptly cutting off as the exhaustion finally overwhelmed her. But just as she was about to crumple to the ground in a dead faint, Bloom rushed forwards and held her steady. At the same time, she was enveloped in a soft light. In a split second, her clothes have morphed into a new get-up altogether. The CRP top had a different design. Her shorts elongated into a two-tier, orange ankle-length skirt. The boots became platform slippers, and her headband fanned out into a tiara. "Hey, are you all right? Say something." Bloom shook the girl gently, but got no response. Kiko, who had been hiding ever since his owner got involved in the battle, came out to stare at the blonde with great curiosity. "We can't leave her here," said Bloom worriedly. "She needs help immediately. Midoriya, I need you to help me hold her up." Despite being completely confused and unsure of what was going on, but the urgency in Bloom's voice got him to the ready, "Ah, right?" In another dimension, the ogre stumbled into the misty void that he was instructed by his mistresses to report back to after his mission. The air was gloomy and oppressive, not helped by the fact that he had failed his mission. He waited nervously, eyes flirting about the void. In the darkness and the mist, he couldn't tell when or where his mistresses were going to appear from, if they were. At times, he only heard their voices, while other times he saw their silhouettes. It was never certain, and perhaps that was on purpose, to keep him on edge. "It's clear that you've failed us again, Canute," came an ice-cold voice, making the ogre shrink back slightly. "Care to make your excuses for your latest screw-up?" "I almost had it. My ghouls were able to hold her down and I got the scepter." Canute tried to explain his case. "Then why isn't it with you, you useless meathead?" came a second voice, harsher than the first, but equally unforgiving. A hard smack to Canute's head followed suit. The ogre rubbed the sore spot. "Why see, your evilnesses," this earth girl interrupted and threw rocks at us. "What?" A third voice interrupted him. "Did you say a human caused you to lose the scepter?" But she was no ordinary earth human. Canute winced from his ears ringing. She had magic powers. "Canute," the first voice addressed him with immense exasperation and frustration, "how many times must we knock into your empty, cobweb-filled skull that humans don't?" "Magic powers?" "But it's true," Canute attested. "She made this shield of fire that burned 2 of my ghouls to ashes." The 3 figures seemed to consider this. "Anything else?" "There was another human too." "Another one?" the second voice asked incredulously. "Yes," Canute nodded fervently. "It was a boy this time. He fell from the sky and dash." "Canute," the third voice interrupted agitatedly, "I swear if you are trying to pull a fast one on us." "But it's true," the ogre insisted. "He fell out of the sky and hit me on the head." "Well, at least we now know whatever semblance of brain cells he has is now lost," the second figure muttered to the first. "And this boy has magic powers too. He made this geyser of water that took out 3 of my ghouls." The 3 figures appeared to have a silent conference with this new information. "Did you see what these 2 humans looked like?" the first figure demanded. I know the girl had long red hair, but the boy You useless lout," the third figure snapped, smacking the ogre again. "This doesn't help us in finding them at all." "Oh, but your evilnesses, one of my ghouls managed to return with this." Canute pulled the piece of Breathe's leg fabric from his overalls pocket quickly, hoping not to get hit again. "With a hunting troll, we should be able to find them right away." Again, the 3 figures conferenced between themselves, leaving the ogre to wait out the tense silence with growing anxiety. "All right then," the first figure finally addressed him. "Your new mission will be to take the first hunting troll you can get your hands on, and find those 2 pesky humans. Bring them both and the scepter back to us. And Canute, you better do a DM'n good job this time round, or else." The threat didn't need to be said for the ogre to understand the consequences of failure. "I won't let you down, your evilnesses," he saluted, before retreating from the void. "You're going to have to run that through me again, sweetie. You're saying your blonde friend is a fairy? Like with wings and magical powers that I've seen in your drawings?" "Yes, Dad, that's what I've been trying to tell you for the past 10 minutes. And that guy friend Midoriya just appeared by falling out of the sky?" Again, Dad, yes. Mike was, naturally, confused and disbelieving of the account his only daughter had told him to explain the unconscious blonde girl taking up the living room couch and the nervous green-haired teen milling about in the same room, unsure of what was happening. "You'll have to forgive me, Bloom, for thinking this is all a bit out of this world and impossible to believe." The redhead sighed. Of course her father would think this was just a bunch of made-up fantasies. That, or she had gone completely insane. But at least her mother seemed to be taking things in her stride, cleaning up the blonde girl's injuries and offering Midoriya a cup of tea. "It must have been a frightening experience for you, dear," the older woman said as she passed him the steaming mug. "Thank you, Vanessa-san." Midoriya took the mug and took a sip. "I don't know what happened. All I remember was tripping, then falling through this void with exploding colors and lights. The next moment, I'm falling out of the sky, and then I'm here." He left out the part where he had been taking his own life. He didn't want things to escalate further than necessary right now, given his more pressing questions about his current predicament. Honey, you seriously can't actually believe that Midoriya somehow fell from the sky, and that he and our daughter fought off an ogre and a bunch of ghouls, creatures that don't exist in reality, to save a girl who is allegedly a fairy, right? Mike said to his wife in disbelief. Well then, how do you explain the both of them suddenly appearing in our home? Vanessa retorted steadily. All that was true, I witnessed it. All eyes turned to the blonde girl, who had just regained consciousness and was now propping herself up into sitting position. How are you feeling, my dear? Vanessa asked kindly. Much better, thank you, she replied. I'm Stella of the Kingdom of Solaria, by the way, and you must be Bloom's parents? Yes, we are. All right then, Stella smiled. So I was saying I was attacked by this smelly ogre and his ghoul minions, because they were after my scepter, which is central to my powers as the Fairy of the Shining Sun. And they would have gotten it too, if it weren't for Bloom intervening. She used her powers to incinerate the ghouls and keep them back. Then Midoriya came falling out of the sky and knocked the ogre out. He helped us out big time by keeping the ghouls at bay. Faced with the three of us, those foul creatures hightailed out of there with their tails between their legs. Silence followed for several moments. Mike broke it by rubbing his head to nurse the headache growing there. All right, that's it, he said firmly. I'm calling the hospital and the police. You clearly need help and we need to find your parents. Stella huffed indignantly as Mike strode over to a telephone sitting on a nearby side table. She raised her hand, which glowed a light yellow, and sparkles fluttered from her fingertips. Mike had barely picked up the receiver when it too glowed. In the blink of an eye, it had turned into a bouquet of flowers. Do you believe me now? Mike stared at the admittedly appealing flowers with slackened jaw. Vanessa was surprised too, but she seemed to register what had just happened much faster than her husband. Bloom, why don't you take Stella and Midoriya up to your room for a bit? Your dad and I need a private moment to sort this out, she suggested whilst going up to her stupefied husband. All right, Mom, Bloom replied, moving towards the staircase. Follow me, you guys. Stella got up from the couch and jovially followed the redhead. Midoriya quietly thanked Vanessa for the tea, retreating with the two girls to give the parents the privacy needed. So I have powers, huh? Bloom remarked. As she sat down on her bed, does that make me a fairy then? Right on the mark there. Stella chirped, curiously inspecting her savior's room, especially her drawings. But how is it possible? Asked Bloom. I certainly didn't have them yesterday or any time before that. Well, my guess is that your powers have always been inside of you but dormant, Stella theorized, eyeing one particular drawing with added interest. The danger we experienced just now must have been the trigger that awakened your powers. That may be true, Bloom conceded, but my family doesn't have powers themselves. Midoriya whirled around at this. Wait, Bloom-san, did you say your parents don't have powers? Yes. Why? Are your parents quirkless? He asked, something akin to hope in his eyes. Bloom raised her eyebrow. Stella echoed her confusion. Quirk.less? What are you going about, Midoriya? The slight ember of hope died in Midoriya's eyes. So then no-one else has powers here? Like regular people on the streets? That made befuddled Bloom even more. No, why do you ask? Midoriya's shoulders sagged. Oh no. That means that I really am in a completely different world. Can you explain, Midoriya? Prompted Bloom. You see, from where I am from, the majority of humans have some kind of superpower, or as they are called, quirks, he divulged. What kind of powers? Asked Stella curiously. Boundless, anything beyond human creativity, Midoriya articulated. Like, someone might have super strength, someone else might have telekinesis, some might have the power to control the elements, that is, fire, water, ice, air, earth, the list goes on. Some might even have the power to control the very workings of the world, like sound, nature, gravity, so on and so on. Just about anything that you can imagine is a possible quirk in my world. Both girls were blown away by this new revelation. Then what about you, Midoriya? Stella asked excitedly. What's your quirk? I'm sure it must have been really powerful to take out those ghouls from earlier. The green-haired teen's expression fell, and he rubbed his arm abashedly. Well, remember how I said a majority of the people from my world have a quirk? Yes. You see that I don't have one. I'm part of the shrinking minority that don't have a quirk. But that can't be. Stella exclaimed in surprise. I saw those 3 ghouls approaching out of the corner of my eye, but before I could turn around to fend them off, you already did it for me. That's the thing, it shouldn't have been possible. Midoriya started pacing around the room. I should have been mauled by those ghouls or worse, but then, I felt something rupture inside me and all of a sudden, I'm shooting out a geyser of water strong enough to snap an oak tree in 2 and obliterate the ghouls as if they're made of paper. Could it be that you are a late bloomer? Asked Bloom. No, it's not possible. Midoriya shook his head. A common trend among quirkless individuals in my world is that they have an extra joint in their pinky toe. When a quirk didn't manifest when I was 4, which is the expected age for a child's quirk to manifest, I was brought to the doctor for an examination. The X-ray clearly showed that I had the extra toe joint, meaning I was truly quirkless. The trio mulled in silence for a moment. Well, Stella huffed, since that's the case, it's obvious that the both of you, she gestured to Bloom and Midoriya, have fairy powers. But again, how? Asked Bloom. None of my parents have powers themselves. Come on, girl. Stella sat down next to the redhead and threw an arm over her shoulders. Think outside of the box. Maybe your powers were dormant for generations before opening up with you. No one in my family lineage had anything out of the ordinary in their genes though, Bloom pointed out. Pardon me if this is too forward of me, Bloom-sen, Midoriya interjected, but are you by any chance adopted? Why yes I am, the redhead nodded. Then that's another theory. Stella enthused. Maybe something happened to your Biartage parents or your home domain, so they sent you here to Earth for your protection. That seems like something right out of a comic book. Bloom remarked. Well, after everything that has happened today, don't you think that there is even a minuscule chance that it might be possible? Stella retorted knowingly. Bloom found that she had conceded that point too. That doesn't explain me though, Midoriya pointed to himself. Ah yes, you the anomaly. Stella had a thoughtful expression. You're the unknown one here. You've come from a parallel universe where powers are basically the norm, but don't have powers yourself. Yet you do have powers, but they are not the same thing. Midoriya and Bloom eyed the blonde, deep in her thoughts. Well, Stella finally said after a few moments, the only theory I can think of is that you and Bloom are siblings from the same domain, but were separated after whatever calamity befell your home. Both mentioned teens turned to one another, silently agreeing that the scenario might be possible too, if a little far-fetched. But anyway, enough with the speculating, Stella declared, bringing the attention back to her. Let's stick with the facts. The fact is, you two have magic powers. And you two should totally come with me to the Alfia College of Fairies. With the education provided by the best magical learning institute in all of Magix, I'm certain you two will grow into powerful fairies yourselves. Midoriya and Bloom just stared at Stella, dumbstruck. Hold up, you want us, Bloom gestured to herself and Midoriya, to go with you to a school for fairies? Stella nodded. But this is all still new to us, Stella-san, Midoriya pointed out. We've just discovered that we have powers today, and who's to say that we can just summon them at will again? Are they a permanent part of us, or is it only a one-time deal? And will Bloom-san's parents let her go in the first place? Furthermore, even if by some miracle that we get to go, I'm sure that there must be some entrance exam that we have to take in order to get in. We'll be at a disadvantage and dash. Whoa there, Mr. Motormouth. Stella hurriedly grabbed his shoulders to stop the mutter storm from brewing out of hand. Chill out, yeah? Oh, Midoriya blinked, then blushed abashedly. Sorry, bad habit of mine. Not to worry, to that and all the questions you two no doubt have, said Stella, stepping back. Since we're starting with the basics here, let's try something simple, yeah? Stella waved her hand at a pencil holder on Bloom's desk. The pencils floated out and dropped with a clatter all over the floor. This is a basic cleaning spell, Sortium, Stella explained. Here, give it a try, Bloom. Okay, the redhead put her hands out over the pencils and concentrated, sortium. At first, nothing happened. None of the pencils moved. Bloom then put more effort into her concentration, trying to draw that energy she felt back at the park clearing. Finally, a few of the pencils started to quiver, rising a centimeter off of the floor. But just as Bloom seemed to get the hang of it, the energy inside her suddenly surged, breaking her concentration with a gasp. The pencils, like released springs, shot out in every direction, clattering against the walls and other objects in their path. Midoriya ducked to avoid one that sailed over his head. "Well, at least your powers are working, a bit too well if you ask me," Stella remarked with it. Shrug. Bloom released a shaky breath. "It's no use, I can't do it." "Well, of course not, it's only your first honest try." Stella waved her hand, and all the pencils reassembled on the floor in front of them. "Now you try, Midoriya." The green-haired teen swallowed, stretching out his hands and concentrated just like Bloom before him, sortium. Again, nothing happened at first. Midoriya tried to reach inside himself to draw the energy out. Only for everything to rupture the moment he put the barest touch on it. A blast of water shot out from his hands, hitting the floor with a splash, knocking a few pencils about and drenching the rest. Midoriya visibly sagged at his failure. Stella, on the other hand, was thinking deeply, hand on her chin. "You're able to come into contact with your magic. But it's too volatile now. You need to be able to control it to utilize it better," she said, waving her hand over the soaked floor, her magic drying up the water and putting the pencils back into the holder. "Suddenly going to Alfia sounds really appealing now," Midoriya muttered to himself. "Well, I can take you both there right now," said Stella as she got up from the bed. "It would be most improper of me not to show you what it looks like at least." "How?" asked Bloom. "By magical simulation portal, of course." In Stella's hand, what looked like a postcard appeared from thin air. She let it flutter to the floor, where it expanded until it was the size of a large floor mat. "Now, all you have to do is stand on it." Stella stepped onto it, and to Bloom and Midoriya's surprise, began to sink into the portal, the surface rippling as she went, and the portal does the rest. Bloom and Midoriya made no move to get up. "Come on. It's not so bad, you barely feel anything," Stella called out to them, just as her head disappeared through the portal. The two remaining teens glanced at one another, before getting up and gingerly stepping on the portal together. Right away, they began sinking through the rippling surface. True to Stella's words, it wasn't an unpleasant feeling, as if they were phasing through water slowly without getting wet. They landed gently on a grassy terrain, with trees abound as far as the eye could see. And straight ahead of them was a majestic castle with turrets and towers with domed roofs, framing a large courtyard behind a set of gates that resembled a pair of wings. "Wow," both Bloom and Midoriya breathed. "Yep, appealing isn't she?" Stella preened with pride. "That over there is the Alfia College of Fairies." Meanwhile, unbeknownst to the people of Gardenia, an ogre was leading a distinctly ugly hunting troll and a small army of ghouls through the alleyways of the city to not be spotted by any wandering humans. "Do you have her scent?" asked Canute. The troll stuck its warty, hideous nose in the air and took a big sniff. "Girls scent nearby," it grunted. "Then let's keep moving," said Canute. After crossing through a few more alleyways, the group took cover under an unlit portion of the sidewalk directly behind the Devise's townhouse. The troll took another sniff in the air, grunting lowly as it exhaled. "What now?" asked Canute. "Girls scent lost," it growled. Bloom and Midoriya were lost for words at the magnificent sight before them. The castle seemed to radiate with magic, and it was that very ethereal aura that seemed to beckon them towards its gates like a siren's song enchanting sailors to their call. They took a few steps forward. It simply would not do to not start exploring this new world around them. "Sorry to disappoint you guys," Stella's voice broke the enchantment, "but this is only a simulation after all. One more step and you would have very sore nose to deal with." Blinking, Midoriya turned away from the blonde and back towards Alfia. He took a step forward and stretched out his hand. True enough, his palm felt a solid, invisible wall running down from the edge of the postcard above them. "Could you tell us more about Alfia then?" Bloom asked Stella. "But of course," the blonde agreed excitedly. All sorts of students come to Alfia for their magical education. Mostly fairies, some pixies, and a few Gwillians. Royal families from other realms send their daughters here too to hone their powers to become guardian fairies to protect their realm. Are there any other schools here in Magix? Asked Midoriya. Oh yes. Stella nodded. Directly across the enchanted forest from Alfia is the Red Fountain School of Heroics and Bravery. Really action-packed and adrenaline-pumping if I must say so myself. That's where the sons of families from across the magical dimension come to train to become specialists. They may not have magic powers like us fairies, but they are trained in physical strength, mental prowess, intelligence gathering and analysis, tactical planning and mastery over magical beasts, among other things. And let me tell you, hot boys with handsome faces and muscled bodies who know how to fight, that will make anyone swoon. If you say so, Bloom shrugged. On the other hand, Stella's dreamy excitement died as she moved on. Alfia is also just across the lagoon from what I would describe as the creepiest and most dangerous place in the realm, the Cloud Tower School for Witches. You sound as if you have a thing against witches, Midoriya remarked. I admit I am rather biased towards fairies and specialists in general, Stella conceded. Witches lean towards the more negative aspect of magic. And while I won't deny that there are witches who use their powers for good out there, a significant portion of them won't hesitate to use their powers to cause mischief for others at best, or to downright hurt or kill at the very worst. But surely there are bad fairies and specialists too? Bloom asked diplomatically. Oh, of course there are, Stella replied, but we don't get them that often. It's in the nature, as some say. Fairies and specialists generally fall into nature of the good, and witches generally fall in the nature of the bad. Well, that is certainly a lot to cover, Midoriya crossed his arms. It is. Magix is one huge, complicated realm, let alone the other planets in the dimension. Stella agreed. Nothing is black and white here, or anywhere else in the magical dimension. But trust me, things will be a bit easier when we start the new term at Alfia. That is going to be a huge decision for me though, Bloom said wistfully. I mean, I'm going to be leaving everything, my parents, my regular high school, my friends, behind to attend someplace where I know virtually no one. That is, if my parents even allow me to go in the first place. Well, as they say, the more who vouch for something, the easier the obstacle is to overcome, Stella said as she put away a device Bloom suspected was akin to her mobile phone. I just sent a quick text over to a few guys from Red Fountain inviting them over to your place. My hunch is should your parents meet more of the people from Magix, they'll be more willing to let you go to Alfia. Plus, with that smelly ogre on the loose, it's killing two birds with a single stone for the specialists to deal with him too. Cool, so when are they coming over? Asked Bloom. In a few minutes, said Stella. Interrealm travel is extremely quick and efficient. In fact, I think we better head back to tell your parents about the arriving guests before they gatecrash your place. Bloom and Midoriya nod. Stella then leapt upwards, disappearing through the portal back into Bloom's room. Bloom went up next, lastly by Midoriya. Outside of the Devise's home, the hunting troll perked up. Girls sent back. With two others, one boy. Canute smiled devilishly. Excellent work, now we make our move. The ghouls screeched excitedly, following the troll and the ogre towards the back door. So you're just going to believe her? That she is a fairy and our daughter is also one? Mike asked, disbelief mixed with frustration. Well, then how do you explain those times in the past that Bloom's injuries seemed to heal virtually overnight with no scarring left behind? Vanessa returned with a raised eyebrow. Or that time she got a serious concussion back when she was 5 and it healed in a matter of days instead of the expected weeks? It could have been less serious than we thought, Mike tried to explain. I saw the x-rays, Mike, his wife stood firmly. It was a classic case concussion caused by a blunt force trauma to the head, in this case, by a flower pot. It should have taken Bloom a month or so to get back on her feet, but she was already doing so in 3 days. How to explain that without thinking there must be some otherworldly intervention going on? Mike sat down on an armchair with a huff. All right, let's go with that for now. What about the boy, Midoriya? As far as we know, he is alone in a strange world, said Vanessa. He'll need all the help he can get. I think it will be wise for him to stay with Bloom and Stella until he is able to find his way home. Mike was about to say something, but was cut off by an almighty crash as the back door to the house was blown inwards with great force. Heavy footsteps rocked the house as the troll lumbered in. Mike was in his feet, yanking a lamp out of its socket. What the hell is that? Canute and the ghouls followed close behind. Stand down, humans, the ogre grinned nastily. We just want the fairies. If you don't give us trouble, we might just spare you both. Upstairs, Midoriya's ears picked up the ruckus one floor below. Girls, do you hear that? There was a loud roar and the room shook. Something's broken in. My parents are down there. Bloom gasped, quickly bolting out of the room, Stella and Midoriya following close behind. Fight or flight instincts kicking in, Vanessa grabbed several books from a nearby bookcase and threw them at the invading creatures. The ghouls scattered, dodging the books. Canute merely batted one aside and the troll stood firm even when one of the thicker books hit it on the head. All right, since you puny humans asked for it. Ghouls, get them. Screeching wildly, the ghouls leapt for the two humans. Mike brandished the lamp and managed to knock one aside, but a second was immediately upon him, pinning him to the floor. Vanessa threw a stool at the ghouls prowling towards her, but missed. The ghouls leapt onto her, pushing her to the floor. Canute stomped forward. Tell us where they are, or you'll be ghoul food in seconds. Hey, stick breath. The ogre spun on his heel. Stella, Bloom and Midoriya were standing by the archway. Fight someone your own size, you effing coward, said Stella. Troll, get her. Canute ordered. As the blue behemoth lumbered forwards, Stella readied herself. Magic winks. A glow of light burst from Stella's chest, enveloping her. Her clothes transformed into the CRP top and low-cut shorts she was wearing in the clearing. Her wings sprouted from her back, fluttering with sparkling dust swirling around them. Come at me, you foul nutcase of a beast, she taunted. Both Canute and the troll lunged for Stella. Seeing her parents in trouble, Bloom rushed into the room. Get off them, you little freaks. The ghoul clawing at Mike's face leapt off of him and made a lunge for Bloom. Using the stool her mother used earlier, Bloom whacked the incoming ghoul straight into the family television, knocking said appliance to the floor and breaking with a crash. The ghouls holding Vanessa down lunged for Midoriya, who in the moment of panic, somehow managed to summon a cleaver from the kitchen. Swinging it wildly, he bisected one ghoul, decapitated the second, and disemboweled the third, blood splashing over his face and Gakurin. The remainder wisely back away for safety. Bloom turned to her parents. Go! Get out of here. Don't worry about us. Not wasting a second, Mike got up and rushed over to his wife. Helping her up, they scrambled for the window. Opening it, they slipped out, leaving the trio to continue the fight. Stella had her scepter out, blasting Canute and the troll with bursts of light. Grunting in annoyance, the troll lumbered away, looking for easier targets. Its eyes zeroed in on Bloom, who was keeping a pack of ghouls back with a fire poker. Roaring loudly, it raised its fist. Bloom-san, look out! The troll roared in agony, pain shooting up its leg from a long gash running down it. Midoriya brandished his cleaver, the blade dripping with blood. Hey, come after me! Midoriya didn't know where this bravery, or was it foolhardiness, was coming from. But he had to intervene before Bloom was hurt, troll or not. The lumbering creature roared again, swinging its fist down towards the green-haired teen. He rolled away, speed honed from years of running and dodging Bakugu's blows and explosions. He decapitated a ghoul before it could leap onto Bloom. Bloom-san, you need to get out here. I'll handle the troll. Nodding, the redhead impaled a ghoul, throwing it into a wall. Grabbing the momentary distraction, she bolted from the living room, a pack of 6 ghouls leaping after her. Now alone, Midoriya led the troll on in a game of cat and mouse, ducking behind overturned furniture to dodge incoming fists and body slams. He waited for momentary lapses in the troll's reflexes to attack, landing more gashes and cuts on the creature's skin. But instead of slowing it down, his attacks only served to anger the troll even further. Roaring, it swung its arm just as Midoriya was bringing down the cleaver in a downwards drop, knocking the blade out of the teen's hands and embedding itself in a wall. Now without a weapon, Midoriya had no means of protection. So he did the one thing he was always good at. Run. He screamed as he dashed out of the living room, barely missing the troll's fist. Skidding at the archway, he cut through the stairwell, taking advantage of the troll getting stuck in the narrower archway to widen the distance. As he rushed for the back door, Canute flew backwards into the wall parallel to him, missing him by centimeters. Reaching the open door and stepping outside, Midoriya stumbled over his feet. With a yelp, he pitched forwards, landing on one of the ghouls that had Bloom cornered, crushing the creature in a shower of crimson. The other ghouls jumped away from their comrade's pulpified corpse, giving Bloom the chance to fight back. Moving the poker forwards, she impaled 2 ghouls like a grisly kebab, before swinging them off into the back wall. Midoriya quickly picked himself up and went to hide behind Bloom. From the open doorway and the window came a bright flash of light. Canute came sailing through the doorway, landing on top of the remaining ghouls and snuffing out their very existence. "Good shot, Stella," Bloom called out. Said blonde fairy came crashing through the back window in a shower of glass. She touched down next to Bloom and Midoriya. "How are you both?" Rather rattled, Bloom released a shaky breath. Thought we've got company," Midoriya shrieked. The troll had burst through the doorway, approaching the trio menacingly. Stella brandished her scepter, Bloom with the poker. Midoriya stayed put behind the girls, pleading to any deity that was watching to send help before they were all done for. The troll roared, but not before an unfamiliar voice mixed in with the din. "Hey Princess Stella. I hope your friends are the pretty girl with the red hair and the dude covered in blood." A thick black cord with a small purple orb at the end wound itself around the troll, immobilizing it like a Thanksgiving turkey about to be slaughtered for the oven. "Yeah. And not this ugly brute," came another voice. All 3 turned towards the other end of the rope. There were 5 guys dressed in identical blue and white uniforms, white fingerless gloves, capes held in place by different colored gemstones, and identical dark blue boots. It was no doubt they were the specialists that Stella had invited over. The first one had auburn hair, wore glasses, wielded what appeared to be a gun of some sort, and lanky in build. The second was a blonde whose fringe partially covered his right eye, sporting a long sword and shield that glowed blue, and was extremely muscular. The third, the one holding the rope, had maroon hair styled upwards and also quite muscular. As was the fourth guy, who had brown hair angled sharp towards his eyes, tan skin, and wielding a light green glowing broadsword. The fifth guy, Midoriya noticed, had dark skin with chin-length black hair, highlighted red with some volume on top and shaved on his right side. The green-haired teen observed that he was a little bit taller than the other guys by a few inches, and while also well-built, his muscles were noticeably bigger. The material of the uniform stretched over the rock-hard flesh. Another noticeable that struck Midoriya deep was his eyes, ruby red, like the petals of a rose in full bloom, of fresh blood that gives life to a body. They glinted in the lights of nighttime, but there was a coldness in them that reminded Midoriya of actual rubies, appealing, but without a life of their own. Midoriya didn't know why, but he felt intimidated by this young man. There was a sense of danger that radiated from him, and the pair of glowing red dual swords he was holding didn't help matters. "Great timing, you guys," said Stella, waving to the specialists. "I think for this situation, a 3-pronged rescue and capture op is best executed," said the blonde specialist. "No, man," the maroon redhead rebuffed cockily. "I've got this all handled." The one with brown hair sighed, running a hand through his locks. "Just because you survived 1 month at a swashbuckler camp doesn't mean you're capable of taking on a hunting troll by yourself." And as if fate was siding with him, the troll jerked its body hard, sending the redhead flying across the yard and landing with a grunt onto Midoriya. The exasperated brunette rolled his eyes. "Told you so." The rope holding the troll captive came loose. Even more enraged, it went straight for the specialists. "Get behind me," the blonde ordered. The shield expanded to cover them, just as the troll began raining down blows on it. Bloom was surprised that such flimsy-looking material was actually deceptively strong. "Hey guys, remember what we were taught when dealing with trolls?" the blonde asked. "Well, The brunette leapt into the air, sword raised. Smash them apart, I think? He slammed the sword against the concrete. There was a flash of green light that raced across the yard. A massive crack broke the concrete apart and raced in between the troll's legs. "No sky," the Auburn specialist rebuffed. "You take out their feet." He aimed his gun and fired 3 times. Bright yellow darts came flying out and exploded at the troll's feet. It lost its balance and fell into the fissure. "Good work, Timmy. Great that you passed the test on forest creatures," Sky praised. Incoming ghouls." Midoriya pointed towards the doorway. A pack of 6 growled as they leapt into the fray. The maroon redhead picked himself up from Midoriya, turning back to the trio. "Stay here, this won't take long." He then unsheathed a glowing purple sword and took out 2 ghouls with a couple of slashes. The dark-skinned specialist joined in as well, 3 ghouls meeting their end in pieces at the swings of his dual blades. The remaining ghoul leapt onto the redhead, trying to claw at him. The other managed to yank it off, but the momentary distraction allowed Canute to launch a sneak attack on them, knocking them aside with 2 well-aimed punches. The ogre advanced on the 2 downed specialists, prompting Stella, Bloom, and Midoriya to intervene. "Hey, leave them alone," Midoriya shouted. Canute started, just as a blast of energy knocked him to the ground. "Nice aim there, you two," said Stella. "But it just happened out of nowhere," Bloom blinked. "And I didn't have to reach inside for it," Midoriya added, staring at his hands. "Sometimes, you don't have to do much," Stella explained. "Your magic does it for you." Midoriya would have loved to ask more questions, but now wasn't the time. The battle was still ongoing. Canute had picked himself up and was now facing the 2 specialists he had taken down earlier. Before the fighting could pick up again, Stella intervened. "I think you've caused enough damage here, you putrid fucker. You might want to skedaddle off, before I am forced to use my Stinkus Removus spell on you and cleanse that years-old stench off of your crusty but skin." To Bloom and Midoriya's surprise, Canute actually blanched at the threat. His eyes darted around. The specialists were all poised to attack, weapons drawn. Seeing that he was vastly outnumbered, Canute did the wisest thing possible. With 1 lone ghoul clambering onto his shoulder, the ogre clapped 3 times. The same sickly magenta light enveloped them, whisking them away into thin air as it faded. The specialists lowered their weapons, now that the enemy was gone. "I didn't know he was ablutophobic," Bloom remarked. Ogres tend to be like that," Stella shrugged. "So anyway, Bloom, Midoriya, these hotties here are the red fountain guys I was talking about." "That is Riven," the maroon redhead scowled. Midoriya hummed. He would look a lot more handsome if he smiled. And if that smile was actually genuine. "Prince Sky of Heraklion," Stella pointed to the brunette, who returned the greeting with a jovial, "Hey." Timmy, the bespectacled specialist, chuckled and waved. Brandon, Sky's bodyguard, the blonde winked, keeping away his shield. And Prince Rikios of Lungkimda, the dark-skinned specialist, nodded with a deep grunt. Again, Midoriya felt a spike of nervousness tingle his spine, especially when Rikio's gaze briefly turned towards him. From the fissure, the troll crawled out, growling menacingly. "Not so fast, you big brute, you're coming with us." Timmy snapped a large collar that crackled with electricity around its neck. "You've caused enough damage and trauma for one night." Bloom watched in wonder as electrical rings encircled the troll, trapping it within the force field. On Timmy's command, the troll was lifted out of the fissure. Brandon noticed the cuts and gashes when the troll was fully lifted into the air. "I don't remember any one of us attacking the troll other than Riven," he wondered. "How did it get those cuts?" That would have been me," Midoriya muttered, flinching slightly when all eyes turned to him. "You," Riven said disbelievingly. "How?" "I managed to summon a cleaver from the kitchen," Midoriya explained, scratching his cheek. "The troll was about to attack Bloom-san, so I used myself as a distraction. I was able to cut it several times, but it managed to knock it out of my grasp. I fled after that." Brandon, Sky, and Timmy appeared impressed. Rikios had an eyebrow raised appraisingly. "You know," Sky remarked, "you'd make a great specialist at Red Fountain." Midoriya started, turning pink in embarrassment. "Really?" Are you kidding, Sky? Riven interrupted. Do you see how scrawny he is? He won't even last a day. Midoriya deflated. Brandon stepped forward. Riven, that's uncalled for. With the right training, Midoriya's sure to catch up easily. Stella interrupted the budding argument. While I'm happy to see most of you having faith in our blood-stained green bean here, I'm sorry to say he's already claimed. She threw an arm over his shoulder. You see, he's coming to Alfia with me and Bloom the day after tomorrow. The specialists started at this revelation. Riven, though, was more open about his skepticism. A boy going to a school for fairies? I thought only girls go to that place. Somehow, the redhead's words irritated Midoriya deeply. He gritted his teeth and clenched his fists. At the same time, a fire hydrant across the street from the Devises' home exploded with an almighty bang. The resulting geyser of water shot into the air, then arched over the street. Stella backed away quickly, as did everyone else, as the water swirled around Midoriya's blood-soaked form, which appeared to be flickering, his Gakurin into brief flashes of an unfamiliar set of clothes, and the fleeting glimmers of what appeared to be wings on his back. The swirling water then shot upwards to the sky, taking the form of a phoenix as it went. A haunting trill echoed through the night, as it disappeared without a trace. Everyone went from staring at the now-gone water, back to Midoriya. He had unclenched his fists, but his irritated scowl remained. You thought wrong, Midoriya spat out. Riven defensively put his hands up in surrender. Rikios eyed Midoriya consideringly. It was a tense silence for a moment, and it was Bloom who broke it. So what's going to happen to the troll? She asked. We're taking it back to Red Fountain with us, Timmy replied, visibly relieved. It's likely to be headed for a creature preserve. And that should be our cue to get moving, said Sky, sheathing his broadsword. Well, we won't keep you guys any longer, Stella nodded as Timmy set up a portal. Take care, you guys. Bye. Sky and Timmy waved before stepping through the portal with the troll. Riven didn't say anything as he too stepped through. I hope to see you at Alfia, Bloom. Brandon called out. Bloom waved to him with a grin as he stepped through the portal. Now only Rikios remained. He stepped towards the portal, paused, then turned back towards Midoriya. Said teen swallowed nervously at the unnerving gaze, only releasing the breath he had been holding when the dark-skinned specialist finally turned around and stepped through the portal, which closed immediately after. Well, I'm glad that's over, Bloom huffed. Tell me about it, Stella nodded. I'm puffed out from all the drama today. So anyway, she clapped her hands, let's go check up on your parents, Bloom. Make sure they're okay. And Midoriya, she eyed the teen up and down, you might want to borrow some clothes from Bloom's dad and take a shower. Crusting blood doesn't look good on you. Midoriya looked down at his blood-soaked uniform. I think I'll do that, Stella-san. Bloom, Midoriya and Stella returned to a house in pieces. In the wrecked living room, Vanessa was tending to the scratches that marred Mike's face and arms. Mom, Dad, said Bloom, are you both okay? We're fine, Wallaby. Mike winced as his wife applied rubbing alcohol on a scratch on his cheek, more or less. And you three? Asked Vanessa. We're fine too, Mom, Bloom replied, but Midoriya needs to borrow a pair of Dad's clothes and the bathroom. Sure, but I don't think my clothes will fit though, said Mike. No worries. Stella smiled. One resizing spell and anything you provide will fit perfectly. All right then, said Vanessa as she kept away the first aid box. Come with me, Midoriya my dear, I'll show you where the bathroom is. Okay. And Bloom. Mike turned to his daughter. Could you get the spare mattresses for your friends? Will do, Dad. The night passed and the new day dawned upon Gardenia. The morning sun phased through a gap in the blinds, falling upon a still sleeping Midoriya. But it was a sleep that was far from peaceful, one that not even the gentle rays of the sun could awaken him from. No, Kakakin, stop, please. No. The explosions continued. His body was being flung around like a ragdoll. Amidst the flames and loud noises, ghouls were leaping and clawing at him. Ogres and trolls were tossing him about like a beach ball. He landed on the ground with a hard thump. Attempting to prop himself up, but a hand pushed him back down harshly. He looked up and he flinched. Those eyes, red in color, filled with hatred, anger, and malice. They burned like the fires of hell, followed by a voice that only promised more pain and agony. You should have died, useless Deku. You are nothing. Worthless. No one will care that you are gone. The world will be better off without you. He screamed again, as from those very hands came another set of explosions. Then everything stopped. He jerked up. He was alone in a dark void. The ghouls, ogres, trolls, and him were all gone. Everything was darkness, an emptiness that echoed with a dead silence. There was nothing else but him. Until it wasn't. The darkness was disrupted by a glimmer of light. He squinted at it as it grew bigger, like the sun rising over the horizon. From the light, a shadow appeared. It then morphed into a silhouette of a figure. And as if a light was shining upon it gradually, the figure came into view. He started breath-hitching. Ooka-san. She appeared no different from when she last saw her. Even her clothes were the exact ones she was wearing when she saw him off that morning. She was looking about furtively, as if missing something important. He tried to get her attention. He knew what, or rather, who she was looking for. Ooka-san. I'm here. I'm right here. He shouted at the top of his voice. He even got up, despite the pain racking his body. He waved and jumped, hoping that she would see him. Ooka-san. I'm right here. Please. I'm over here. But she didn't seem to see him. Or even hear him. It was as if he was invisible, or a ghost separated by the veil of death from the living. He watched her look about a moment longer. Then, the frantic look on his mother's face slipped into one of resigned defeat. To his horror, she turned around, and appeared to walk off into the distance, head hung low and hands clenched together. Ooka-san. Don't go. I'm here. Please. I'm right here. Again she was deaf to his pleas and shouts. She continued walking into the light, growing smaller and smaller as she went. He tried to run after her, but it seemed that no matter how hard he moved his legs, he was stuck in place, immobilized. His cries became more desperate as his mother continued to walk away from him, quickly become an indecipherable dot in the light, which also appeared to be fading. Ooka-san. Don't go. Don't leave me. Please. Come back. Come back. The last vestiges of light were disappearing fast, his mother already out of sight. Then, the void began to shake, and there seemed to be someone calling out to him. Midoriya. Midoriya. He jolted awake, bolting upright with a sharp intake of breath. Midoriya, it's okay. Calm down. Breathe. The teen's breathing was fast, heart thundering at the speed of sound. He glanced furtively about, not quite registering his surroundings in his panicked haze. Breathe with me, Midoriya. It took him several moments to register that someone was holding him, a soothing voice working hard to abate his frantic delirium. He tried to follow what the voice was saying, slowing down his breathing to calm his heart. When he was finally in a state of relative normality, he turned to the person holding him. Bloom-san. The redhead gave him a concerned look. You were having a nightmare. A quite violent one, and you were flickering as you thrashed about. How are you feeling now? She asked. Midoriya turned to stare blankly into the air. This wasn't a continuation of his dreams. He wasn't back in his own world. He was in Gardenia, in Bloom's room. Not his own All Might-themed bedroom, not in his apartment. His eyes became misty. I saw my mom. His voice trembled. She was looking for me. IT tried to call out to her, but as she didn't hear or see me. As she gave you up, and she walked away. I tried to reach her, but Midoriya became too overwhelmed with emotion to continue speaking. As the tears began to fall, Bloom pulled him close and hugged him, her hand rubbing his back soothingly. Kiko, who had been watching the entire debacle apprehensively, approached him to snuggle him. I'm sorry, she said softly, this must be really hard for you. Midoriya didn't say anything, his quiet weeps his only response. There was a knock on the door. Are you two awake? Your mom said dash. Stella cut herself off when she realized what she was seeing. What's wrong? She asked. Midoriya had a nightmare, a really bad one, Bloom explained. Care to share? Stella closed the door behind her. Midoriya sniffled and wiped the tears from his eyes. It's my mom, Stella-san. She was looking for me. I tried to reach her but I couldn't. Another sniff. She's the only family I have, and oh god, she's all alone back in my world. She must be so worried. Another fresh wave of tears threatened to overwhelm Midoriya. Stella quickly joined the hug to do her bit to soothe him. Don't you worry one bit, Midoriya. We'll do our damnedest to help you get back home. I swear on that. Midoriya gave a shaky nod, wiping away his tears. In the meantime, Stella continued, pulling away slightly, you need a distraction. What do you mean, Stella-san? You need something to get your mind off the sad stuff, the blonde explained. As much as we'll do our best to help you get home, that day will take at least until the foreseeable future to arrive. You need something else to direct your energy towards. You'll get nothing done if you mope in what's currently out of our control. Midoriya sniffled. I understand. That's why. Stella stood up. After breakfast, which was the original reason why I came up here in the first place, I think we should all take a trip down to Magix today. Get some fresh air, get you both acquainted with the place to hang out in the magic dimension, and get Midoriya clothes for when school starts. He started at this. It's all right, Stella-san. There's no need to spend money on me. Nonsense. Stella waved her hand dismissively. It's the least I can do for saving me yesterday. Plus, I don't think Bloom's dad is going to appreciate you taking his clothes all the time, and first impressions matter when starting a new term at Alfia, you know. That reminds me, Bloom interjected, I don't think my parents are even aware of our intention to go to Alfia. I know you invited the Red Fountain guys over, but they just took the troll with them without really interacting with my parents. If we suddenly spring the plan on them, who's to say they'll agree? That's why I took the liberty to inform them beforehand, said Stella as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. You see, I woke up early this morning and I went downstairs to get a drink of water. Stella yawned as she made her way down the stairs. The day was already calling for her to begin, but her throat was parched. A glass of water would certainly help start the day right. As she reached the landing, she heard noises and voices coming from the living room. And remind me that this was supposed to be a regular summer? Just roll with it, dear. What's happened has already happened. Anyway, I'm sure the insurance can cover the structural damage. Stella peeked through the archway. Mike was busy sweeping up the floor of broken objects, dust and bits of concrete accumulated from the home invasion the day before. Vanessa was rolling any upturned furniture back into their respective places. The latter wiped her brow before noticing their guest by the archway. Oh, good morning, Stella. You're up early. Yeah, I was on my way to get a drink of water, the blonde replied, stifling a yawn. Oh, let me help you with that, dear. You just stay where you are. Vanessa hurried out of the living room into the kitchen. Stella turned to Mike. I can help if you want. A bit of magic and this place will be spick and span in a moment. Except for the cracks, though. I'm not an architect. The man shook his head. No thanks, Stella. I think we've seen enough magic for now. The blonde shrugged. Your call. Vanessa returned with a glass of water, offering to Stella, who thanked her before taking it and sipping the ice-cold water. So what are you going to do now, Stella? The matriarch asked. What are your plans? Well, I was actually preparing to head off to Alfia for the next school term, when the ogre and the ghouls attacked and forced me to travel through realms to fend them off. As far as I know, my parents still think I'm somewhere in Solaria. Alfia? What's that? Mike asked, resting his arms on the broomstick. It's the best school for fairies in the entire magic dimension. I go there for my education. As Mike considered this, Vanessa asked, is there a way that you can contact your parents to let them know you're safe? I left my phone back in Solaria, but interrealm travel is no biggie, Stella brushed off. Anyways, there's something important I need to ask the both of you. You want Bloom and Midoriya to come with you to Alfia, isn't it? Vanessa guessed with a knowing look. Both Stella and Mike started at this. Yeah, that was what I wanted to ask actually. Vanessa, you can't be serious, letting Bloom go to a school we know nothing about. Well, I can show a preview of what goes on at Alfia, with the help of the school's official slide globe, Stella offered, waving a hand in the air. A cloud of sparkles coalesced into a smooth blue orb, which then opened to let a large projection appear. It even comes with the school song. Oh Alfia, our school makes us proud. The pictures shifted every few seconds, covering different shots of the castle and central courtyard from multiple angles. When you cheer for all our glory, always cheer out loud. The best and brightest gather here. The pictures then started featuring Stella and a few other random students in different locations, both outside in the courtyard and inside the campus. From all our many realms. Learning potions, transformations, and empowering spells. From there, the pictures began showing classes in progress, some with figures both Mike and Vanessa assumed to be the staff of Alfia. Alfia teach us well. As the song ended, so too did the slideshow. The projection shrunk back into the orb, which then closed. It disappeared in a flurry of sparkling lights from Stella's hand. So, what do you think? Mike looked torn. Okay, that slideshow was nice and all, but are we seriously going to let our only daughter go to a school based on only that? Well, I think that's not a bad idea at all, Mike, Vanessa retorted firmly, hands on her hips. Remember our conversation before that troll gate crashed through the door? Yeah, but nothing, Vanessa continued resolutely. We've already established that Bloom is no ordinary teenage girl, what happened yesterday proving that 10 times over. It is only right that as her parents that we allow Bloom to go to a school where she can learn how to use her new powers in a manner that benefits herself and others around her. Who's to say what happened yesterday will not happen again tomorrow, or in the near future? She'll need to learn how to use her new powers to protect herself and those around her. So Mike, I wholeheartedly support Bloom, and Midoriya for that matter, in their enrollment into Alfia. Stella felt a bit intrusive when the conversation turned personal. She had stepped back a bit, but she nonetheless turned to Mike for his response. Well, that when you put it that way, he finally conceded, you've got a very strong point. I know this is hard to comprehend at once given everything that has happened. Vanessa smiled understandingly, stepping forward and taking her husband's hand, but we mustn't hold Bloom back on this. She's her own person, and has her destiny to fulfill. We should be behind her, supporting all the way as her parents. Mike sighed, deep in thought. After several moments of silence, he finally turned to his wife. All right, I understand. However, he pointed out, we should at least tell Bloom that we are willing to let her go to Alfia. It's still her choice after all. Of course, Vanessa agreed, and on that note, I think it is my turn to make breakfast this morning. Stella, could you be a dear and go check on Bloom and Midoriya and wake them up? No probs. I'll be right back. And that's all that was to it, Stella finished. Bloom would be lying to herself if she wasn't surprised by what had transpired. Your mom really is something, Bloom-san, Midoriya remarked. Indeed she is, Stella agreed, and she wanted me to check on you both. Breakfast will be ready soon. Then we better head downstairs, said Bloom, helping Midoriya up to his feet. Good morning, sunshine, Mike greeted his daughter, and good morning to you too, Midoriya. Did you both sleep well? I did, can't say the same for Midoriya though, Bloom replied. Oh, what happened? Asked Mike as Vanessa placed plates of scrambled eggs, bacon and buttered toast on the table. I had a nightmare, the teen replied. I saw my mom, who is alone back in my world. She was searching desperately for me, but I couldn't reach or call out to her. Oh dear, how are you feeling now? Asked Vanessa as she sat down. Midoriya gave a small smile. I'm feeling slightly better now, Vanessa-san. Bloom-san and Stella-san were there to keep me grounded and away from plunging into hysterics. I'm glad to hear that, Vanessa nodded in relief. Come, let's eat. Itadakimasu. Pausing briefly to let Midoriya finish, everyone tucked into the first meal of the day. So Bloom, said Mike, your mom and I have been speaking about yesterday's events. And you'll let us go to Alfia? Asked Bloom with a tad bit of excitement. Yes, Bloom, Vanessa nodded. We think it's best that you and Midoriya follow Stella to Alfia to learn how to use your new powers. You two are going to become your own person soon, and that should include being able to look out for yourselves and others. If Alfia is the right place for you to learn that, which according to Stella, it is, then we've got your backs. Thanks Mom, Dad. Bloom gushed happily, you're the best. Your support fills me with ease, Vanessa-san, Mike-san, said Midoriya gratefully. Think nothing of it, dear. The Davis matriarch took the boy's hand reassuringly. While you're here, you are our child just as Bloom is. Midoriya's breath hitched. His eyes became a little watery, but he quickly rubbed the incoming tears away before the dam broke. Thank you so much, Vanessa-san. I'm really honored. Vanessa smiled warmly, squeezing Midoriya's hand supportively. Stella spoke up. I hate to shift from such a heartwarming moment, but I do have a question to ask. She turned to Mike and Vanessa. Do you two have any plans today? They shook their heads. Great. Because I was thinking that we should all take a day trip to Magix to clear our heads and get Midoriya ready for Alfia. That piqued Mike's curiosity. Magix? It's the capital city of the magical realm, Stella explained. Since Bloom and Midoriya are going to be attending Alfia, I figured that we should get them acquainted with the magical realm, so that things will be a bit less alien starting tomorrow. And it wouldn't be polite of me to not bring you two along as well. Plus, I don't think you would like it if Midoriya were to steal your entire wardrobe, Mike, so I thought a bit of clothes shopping will help him start the new term with the right look. You're right on that one, Stella, Mike agreed. Will it take long? Asked Vanessa. Not at all. Stella replied easily. As I mentioned earlier, interrealm travel is really easy. Granted, it will take a bit more effort to do it properly for a group, but nothing I can't handle. That seemed to seal the deal. Well, come on then. Bloom urged, already finishing up her breakfast. Let's get moving. After food was finished and dishes loaded into the washer, everyone went about freshening themselves up before the trip to Magix. Once ready, they all gathered in the still-wrecked living room, a curious Kiko in Bloom's hand. So how are you going to get us to Magix, Stella? Asked Mike. Simple really, said Stella, taking off her ring. My scepter does the work for me. The ring extended into her scepter. Now hold on to your stomachs. Midoriya braced himself, as did Bloom, her parents and Kiko. Magic of Solaria. Take us to Magix. Stella raised her scepter, as a bright light burst outwards from within. The light enveloped the room, growing brighter by the second. Everything began to shift and distort, when suddenly, the floor seemed to disappear as if ceasing to exist. Midoriya once again experienced that still familiar feeling of tumbling through a void, although this fall was more gradual instead of a high-speed plunge. The entire transition lasted several moments, culminating in the group falling through a burst of light that disrupted the smooth scape of the void. There was a sudden jolt, and they were deposited on a grassy surface, Stella landing with more finesse than her entourage. We're here, said Stella, shrinking her scepter back into her ring. Now that wasn't so bad, right? Mike and Vanessa were preordained to disagree, both looking rather pale and queasy. Bloom and Midoriya quickly got to their feet to help the two adults up. Never again for me, you hear that? Mike grumbled as he attempted to get his bearings together. Vanessa took less time to steady herself. She looked around, taking in the hilly landscape covered in trees. So this is Magix, huh? Not quite, Stella corrected. We're in the portion of the enchanted forest just outside of Alfia, which is just over there. Everyone turned to where the blonde pointed towards. Oh wow, it's appealing. Mike breathed in awe at the towering twin turrets that could be seen poking over the trees. Bloom and Midoriya had to agree with him on that, for it was one thing to see the school in a simulation, but another thing altogether to see it for real in front of their eyes. She is, isn't it? Stella grinned knowingly. Well, we shouldn't dilly-dally, let's get a move on. Following her lead, the group trooped down the hill in the direction towards Alfia. I've been thinking, I wonder what the admissions record is like for Alf Dash. Mike suddenly collided with something head-on, prompting everyone to stop in their tracks. Hey, what gives? He tried pushing against whatever was blocking his path, to no avail, which only added to the mystery since there didn't appear to be anything there. There's like an invisible wall. I can't get through it. Really? Vanessa wondered. She went up to her husband's side and stuck her hand out. True enough, she felt something solid over her palm. Where? Bloom asked in confusion. She took a few steps past her parents, looked around, and held her hand up to feel the air. I don't feel anything. Kiko hopped after his owner, sniffing the supposedly empty air. Midoriya followed Bloom, taking a second to scan the surroundings. Me neither. Maybe something was there but it's now gone. Oopsie, Stella realized. Sorry, I forgot to mention, but there is a barrier that keeps non-magical beings out of Magix. To prove her point, she formed a glowing ball of light in her hand and tossed it towards Bloom and Midoriya. The ball hit the barrier and rippled out, exposing the dome-like protection separating the teens from Mike and Vanessa. So does that mean my parents can't come? Asked Bloom disappointedly. No need to fret, Stella shook her head. While the barrier typically keeps any lost humans and other non-magical creatures out, there is a simple way to bypass it. She raised her hand, and 2 sparkling orbs fluttered from her fingertips. They hovered over Mike and Vanessa, raining down a shower of sparkles over the 2 adults. A few moments later, the orbs vanished. The 2 adults started, their bodies were glowing with a soft yellow light. When you're covered in magic, it's easy to trick the barrier into letting you in, Stella continued. Granted, the magic will wear off eventually, but we've got a full day's cover on that, so there's nothing to worry about. Mike and Vanessa glanced at one another. They took a few tentative steps forward, pausing at where the barrier stood. After a brief moment of trepidation, they stepped through, phasing through the barrier just like the teens did before them. Mike shuddered, unused to the feeling of magic brushing over his skin. At least it's not as bad as interrealm travel. You'll get used to it, Stella reassured. Now, since we're all here and ready, let's head down to the gates of Alfia. There's a bus station that will take us to Magix. Leading the group, Stella guided them through the trees until a dirt road opened up before them. Across it was the gates of Alfia. Wow, it looks even more amazing close up, Bloom commented. Do you think we can take a peek inside? Asked Vanessa curiously as they neared the gates. Sorry, but Alfia only opens its gates to purely magical beings, Stella replied. It's for security reasons. My magic cover wouldn't work under the school's enchantments. As far as I can tell, only special dispensation from Headmistress Farragonda will allow non-magical beings inside. That's a shame, Mike scratched his head. Well, we can't have everything as much as we'd like to, Stella shrugged, glancing down the road, and right on time, I'd say. A blue-colored, dual-carriage vehicle pulled up in front of them. Bloom was quick to realize that it was hovering over the ground, and it had no wheels. The doors opened with a hiss and a small flight of steps lowered for them. Follow me, everyone. On Stella's lead, the group boarded the hoverbus. Where to and for how many, miss? The driver asked. To Magic's main station, and for 5 please, Stella replied. The driver pressed a button on the dashboard. A machine started beeping, a series of symbols flashing over the interface. That would be 15 Ronios in total, said the driver. Midoriya blinked. He may not know the currency exchange rate between the supposed Ronio and the Japanese yen if such a rate even exists, but 15 Ronios seemed like a fair bit of cash there. All on me, good sir, said Stella, taking out what looked like a credit card. She waved the card over a slightly raised pad, which flashed green with a beeping sound. The driver nodded, and to the right, a glass door slid open, revealing the passenger compartment inside. Thank you for traveling with us. The driver nodded to the group as they filed in. There were only a few passengers on board, so finding seats for 5 was no issue. No sooner had everyone sat down, the glass door slid shut, as did the front doors. The bus whirred into life, and began gliding down the road away from Alfia. Midoriya, Bloom, and Kiko turned to look out the window. At the moment, all they could see was trees and more trees rushing past on the admittedly smooth journey towards the capital. This is a really interesting vehicle, Vanessa remarked. Definitely, Stella agreed. The ride is so smooth that you often forget that you're traveling unless you look out the window. On the same note, I don't recommend sleeping unless you are able to wake up at the right time for your stop. Taken from experience? Asked Mike with a raised eyebrow. Not really, but you occasionally hear some funny stories every now and then, Stella revealed. Like there was one fairy from Alfia a couple of years back. She was so tired after a day out in Magix that she fell into a really deep sleep on the ride back. Her friends thought it would be a funny idea to leave her behind on the bus to see how long it will take for her to wake up and realize she missed her stop. It turns out, she was only found the next morning, still sleeping at the depot when the new driver came in and found her inside the bus when he was starting his shift. That's not very nice of them. Vanessa clicked her tongue disapprovingly. True, but you can't help but chuckle a bit at her misfortune and the absurdity of it all, Stella shrugged. The conversation then shifted away from traveling blunders to more general questions about the realm itself. Midoriya and Bloom occasionally joined in, but spent most of the ride watching the city come closer and closer as the bus eventually reached the outskirts. The trees were beginning to thin out, replacing with low-rise buildings that they could identify as either suburbs or shops. Traffic was also beginning to pick up, but the smoothness from before was still maintained to some degree, only breaking at traffic lights. We're almost reaching the downtown core, Stella said. I estimate another 10 minutes before we reach the main station. The hover bus crossed several overpasses, and all around, there were signs that the city was truly taking over. The buildings were growing in height, rising into every shape thinkable. There were more people walking along the sidewalks, and the traffic was growing heavier. Bloom and Midoriya were looking around with wonder, and for the former, a significant level of confusion. Magix isn't what I was expecting, Bloom remarked. What do you mean? Asked Stella. I was kinda expecting something more fantasy-like, Bloom explained, like apothecaries, marketplaces, dragons, flying brooms, elves, unicorns, all those sort of things. I didn't expect it to look so much like Gardenia. A more futuristic version of Gardenia, that is. Oh, Bloom, Stella threw an arm around the redhead's shoulders, that's all fairy tale nonsense, and not to mention old-fashioned. This is the real Magix, where magic and modern technology come together to create the most enchanted city in the magical realm. Just about everyone uses magic for their daily needs. The bus came to a stop at a traffic light. Look, see that lady over there? All eyes turned to where Stella was pointing. A primly dressed lady was standing along a roadside parking section. She snapped her fingers, and the parked vehicles all wheelless, like the hover bus parted like the Red Sea. The empty gap suddenly descended, and a few seconds later, reappeared with a white vehicle on it. The lady got into the vehicle and drove off, the gap closing itself moments later. That's kinda cool, Bloom noted. And not to mention efficient, Vanessa added. Yep. Stella gushed. Magic truly is a lifesaver. The traffic light turned green, and the bus moved again. After taking a right turn, it joined other hoverbuses heading into a huge multi-tiered building Bloom and Midoriya surmised was the city's main station. It took a while for the bus to actually enter the building, due to the buildup going in at the same time. The main station was something that was not unlike what the teens had been expecting. There were many berths for different buses on different routes, people going about their business, alighting, disembarking, or walking to and from buses, and drivers on break or running their buses in and out of the station. Finally, the bus the group were in pulled up at a berth. We're here, said Stella as she got up. Follow me. The back doors hissed open, and steps lowered out into the station floor. The group disembarked, looking about curiously. Come with me, everyone. Stella called over the general din. The group followed the blonde through the berths, arriving at a set of doors that led to what looked like an arrival hall. Just like with the berths, the hall was busy with people rushing about, queuing up and milling around. They made a quick move through the hall, until another set of doors led them to the road and city outside. So what we just left is the Magix main station, Stella explained, the main transport hub servicing the city and the surrounding area. Where we are headed is one of the city's biggest shopping districts, which is only a 5-minute walk from here. So, on that note, let's get moving. They began their journey down the pavement, leaving the station behind as they crossed several roads. It was mostly smooth sailing, save for one incident where a hover car zoomed too close to the pavement, startling Midoriya, who had been walking closest to the edge and actually felt the vehicle skim past. Well, at least Magix is just like any other city, Mike huffed as Vanessa tried to calm the teen down, a-hole drivers with no depth of field. That minor hiccup aside, the group arrived at the shopping district with relative ease. Just like at the station, it was filled with people going about their business. Alrighty. Stella clapped her hands. Let's get started. Stella-san, you don't have to go all out on this, Midoriya tried. To remind her, just something simple will be fine. Oh, don't you worry, the blonde took his hand. We are keeping things simple. But simple also requires variety. You can't just go about wearing the same old style every day. I'm a fashionista, that is something I go by on a daily basis. Without waiting for any further protests, Stella dragged Midoriya into the throngs of people, leaving Bloom and her parents to catch up with them. The entire shopping spree lasted several hours and spanned about half the district. Midoriya quickly lost count of the number of different types of clothing he was made to try on and parade under Stella's appraising eye. Some were of his suggestion, of course, and a few were accepted while the rest rejected. Everything t-shirts, shirts, jackets, tank tops, vests, shorts, bermudas, jeans, briefs, the list goes on, was included and thrown into a bottomless, shrinkable bag Stella reassured was able to hold all the purchases. And that was not including all the accessories, hats, gloves, jewelry, watches, scarves, that Stella had him try on and throw into the bag. Stella had wanted to go for shoes, but that was one line Midoriya vehemently refused to cross. As he told her, you can take my high tops over my dead body, just as a nearby fire hydrant exploded. By mid-afternoon, the entire group was exhausted, save for Stella, who seemed to thrive from the constant moving about and fashion tryouts. It was only the grumbling of stomachs that made Stella realize the time and herd everyone into a restaurant for a late lunch. I didn't know Magix had such Earth-like cuisine, Bloom remarked as they left, thinking about the pasta-like dish she had. Same, Midoriya nodded. I presumed that since we are in a different realm, that the cuisine would be different, or at least have distinguishing qualities that set it apart from cuisine from Earth. But the cuisine is remarkably similar, from appearance, smell, taste, uncannily so. Does this mean that there is some connection between Magix and Earth? Do the magical beings here know about the many different cuisines on Earth? Or is it the other way round? Did the inhabitants of Earth learn cuisine from Magix? Or, having devolved into his habit of muttering, Midoriya didn't notice the coming danger until it was too late. A random person, in their hurry for who knows what, pushed past Midoriya. The teen let out a startled gasp, pirouetting on his heel as his center of gravity shifted. Trying to righten himself, his emerald curls swept over his eyes, blinding him for a second. That single second was more than enough for him to momentarily lose his sense of orientation. The inevitable train wreck came piling in when he accidentally crashed into another random shopper in his confusion, knocking them both to the ground. Watch where you're going, you fucker. The shopper picked themselves up, roughly pushing against Midoriya before storming off. Bloom, her parents and Stella rushed forward to help him up. Honestly, the nerve of that BSE. Vanessa exclaimed, as she helped wipe the dust off from Midoriya's clothes. Midoriya, are you okay? Bloom asked worriedly. I'm fine. As Bloom and her parents fussed over the green-haired teen, Stella stared at the direction the shopper had stormed off to. She turned back to Midoriya, eyeing his curly locks that were falling haphazardly over his face from the accidental tumble. She considered the thought that came to mind. Let's move somewhere less crowded, Mike suggested. The notion was agreed unanimously. Flanking Midoriya from all sides, the group moved away from the main street to a pathway that had significantly less foot traffic. As luck would have it, there were a couple of benches against a row of lampposts. Midoriya was immediately sat down on one, Bloom and Vanessa by his side. I'm so sorry No, Midoriya, listen to me, Vanessa took his hands. It's not your fault. It was an accident. Those people were in the wrong. It took a few moments to get him to calm down. Are you hurt anywhere? Bloom asked. No, I think I'm fine, Midoriya replied. Nodding his assertion, he stood up from the bench, Bloom and Vanessa also doing so. It was my hair, Midoriya explained. It blocked my vision when that person pushed past me. I got disoriented, and I collided with the other person as a result. Stella turned to him. In that case, I think an emergency haircut is in order. Having unruly hair that can blind you is a hazard in itself. Luckily, I know of a hair salon or two in this district. Come, let's get going to sort this out. The blonde grabbed his hand and led him back into the district. Bloom and her parents quickly followed them. It took them about 10 minutes to locate the hair salon Stella had in mind. After a short wait, Midoriya was settled down into a seat, a large cloth draped over his body. "How would you like it done, Sonny?" asked his stylist. A heavily tattooed middle-aged woman with piercings asked. Midoriya was suddenly at a loss. He hadn't thought of anything in the haste to get here. Stella stepped in, something that is practical, but also stylish. Right away, the stylist grabbed a shaver. "Now you just relax, honey, leave everything to me." The sound of the electric razor buzzing away filled the salon. Midoriya watched with some detachment as the hair on the left side was shaved off, the curls falling off like feathers when a bird sheds them during each molting. The hair along the bottom slope of his head was also shaved. His remaining curls and fringe were trimmed and combed to the right. The stylist applied a solution that appeared to straighten the curls slightly, which she then left to settle. After a minute or so, she returned. "All right, Sonny, up you get. Time for a shampoo." Midoriya followed her to the back of the salon, where a row of reclined seats with basins attached at the head awaited. He got onto one and leaned back, head directly over the basin. The stylist took the small shower nozzle and turned the tap on. Midoriya shuddered slightly as the cold water hit his exposed scalp, the stylist running her fingers through his hair to wet it completely. Turning the water off, she applied some shampoo onto her palm and worked it vigorously into his scalp. Midoriya actually felt himself sagging in bliss from the massage, whatever tension from before leaving his body as those hands did their magic. One final rinse later. "Okay, Sonny, just a blow-dry, and you're ready for your family to see." Half asleep from the head massage, Midoriya barely registered himself getting up from the recliner. Sitting back down on the salon seat, the sound of a hairdryer whirring to life slowly brought him back into reality, the hot air tossing his curls about and wicking away any excess moisture. A final run-through with a towel, and he was ready. "I've gotta say, Sonny, you look real smashin'," the stylist remarked with a satisfied nod. Midoriya opened his eyes. He bit back a gasp. Oh wow! What was once a head full of messy curls that stuck out in all directions was now tamed down into a voguish undercut, neatly shaved and artfully styled to give him a rather rogue-like appearance. Stella gave it a thumbs up. "Yep. You look ready to slay with this new look." Midoriya ran a hand through his hair. "It feels lighter." "Definitely," Stella nodded. "Now come on. Let's show the others the new you." Bloom and her parents naturally had praises to give when Midoriya was finally presented to them in the waiting area. "Look marvelous, dear," Vanessa smiled. "Really cool." Bloom gushed. "You've got the bad boy vibes, Midoriya." His face turned pink with embarrassment under the weight of such acclaims. Kiko didn't help by hopping onto his shoulder, feeling up the shaved part of his head, and giving the rabbit equivalent of a thumbs up. Stella paid the stylist for her troubles, and the group stepped back out into the sunlight. "So that's that settled." She turned to the group. "I think we can still squeeze in a bit more shopping, yeah?" "Come on, Stella," Bloom groaned. "We've been at it for hours already. I think we've shopped enough." "But why?" the blonde asked. "There's no such thing as too much shopping." "Stella-san," Midoriya interjected. "Without going into exaggeration, I think we bought out at least 1/3 of the shopping district. Plus, I don't actually need that many clothes." "Oh, nonsense." Stella brushed off. "Again, there's no such thing as too many clothes. There are lots of occasions in life that warrant the variety, you know? You never know when the right moment or opportunity will come, and you should look your best to catch it in your hand." "Stella, while I'm all for preparing Midoriya for his first term at Alfia tomorrow," Vanessa stepped in. "I think he has enough clothes to last his entire education there and then some after. I think we've shopped enough for one day." The blonde considered her words. "Well, when you put it that way," after a moment of thought, she relented. "Fine, we'll call it a day." She turned to Midoriya. "But don't you think for a second that I won't drag you back here when the next line of in-season designs comes out." Midoriya's sweat dropped. I'll not take whatever I can get, I suppose. Well, on that note, Vanessa continued, I think it's time we all headed back home. Mike needs to sort out the damage with the insurers, and I just remembered that today is casserole night. Oh great, Mom! Bloom cheered. I've always loved your casseroles. The matriarch nodded, and if we want it to come out right, I will need a few hours to get it done. So Stella, could you bring us back to Gardenia? Sure thing, Vanessa. We'll just go back the way we came. I just hope she meant backtracking to the station and not go through every single shop that we visited, Mike muttered to himself as they walked down the street. Back in the Devises' living room, a bright flash of light burst out from the thin air. The light grew into a swirling vortex, as the Devises, Stella, Midoriya and Kiko came tumbling out like laundry from an out-of-control washing machine. I got second time and still not used to it, Mike groaned as his head spun. It takes a couple of tries, Stella reassured as she shrunk her scepter. Most would actually vomit on their first few trips, so I'd say you're doing really good actually. Charming, Midoriya replied. Everyone picked themselves up and dusted off their clothes. Do you need help with dinner, Mom? Asked Bloom. No worries, honey, I've got it handled, Vanessa declined, and besides, Stella's magic still has an effect on me. I'm curious to find out if it can help with the cooking in any way. Why don't you three go and prepare for tomorrow? I'm sure you have plenty of things to pack, Mike suggested. All right, we'll leave things to you then, said Bloom. The three teens exited the living room and made their way up the stairs. That reminds me, Stella-san, Midoriya suddenly realized, shouldn't you have let your parents know that you're safe on Earth and you don't have any ogres or ghouls still chasing you through dimensions? They must be quite worried about you. Yes, I intend to return to Solaria tonight just to assure everyone that I'm still alive, Stella nodded. But don't worry, I'll be back tomorrow to bring you both to Alfia. The blonde seemed nonchalant about it all, but Midoriya noticed something in her eyes. A quick flash of something darker, more negative. He couldn't pinpoint what it was, since it was gone so quickly, but he knew it was there. He nodded nonetheless, filing that bit of information away in case it ever came up again. Would you like to stay for dinner, at least? Bloom offered. Oh, I'd love to, Stella nodded. Dinners back home are quite a bore sometimes, and I really enjoy your mom's cooking, Bloom. The redhead smiled, while Midoriya hummed. There was again that darker undertone in Stella's words. The shadow in the brightness that the blonde seemed to radiate. Midoriya's intuitive mind came to the conclusion that all wasn't well back in Solaria. What exactly that troubled paradise he wasn't sure, and he wasn't going to ask Stella until she decided it best to share with them. It was only common courtesy, after all. So anyway, Midoriya, Stella turned to him, let's decide on your outfit for tomorrow. I was thinking. Yep, that conversation could wait for another time. He had bigger fish to fry now. The next morning came, the time had arrived. The Davis family had gathered in the living room, hugging one another and saying their farewells. Now you two have a wonderful time at Alfia, said Vanessa. Remember to study hard and make plenty of friends. We will, Midoriya replied. Thank you so much for your hospitality, Vanessa-san. I really most appreciate it. Think nothing of it, Midoriya, the matriarch smiled. Remember, you are just as much of a son to us as Bloom is our daughter. The green-haired teen hugged Vanessa again. Don't forget to call us every night, Bloom, Mike reminded, and don't get involved in too many hijinks. I won't, the redhead nodded, Kiko hopping up onto her shoulder. Come along you two, Alfia isn't going to wait for us, said Stella. Nodding, Bloom went to get her luggage, Midoriya the expandable, bottomless bag that was used for the shopping trip the day before. They came up to Stella's side. With everything ready, the blonde took off her ring and extended it into her scepter. Magic of Solaria, transport us to Alfia. The scepter glowed, producing a flash of light that enveloped the room. Midoriya could barely see his hosts in the light, but he was able to wave one more time to them and thank them for everything they have done for him as the floor disappeared and the trio were sent tumbling through the void. A few moments later, the void opened in the magical realm, depositing them in a flurry of sparkles. Everyone made it? Stella checked. Receiving nods around. Good, now it's time to make a dazzling entrance. Midoriya released a breath, quickly catching up with Stella with Bloom by his side. Already, he could see Alfia in the distance and a fair bit of people entering her gates. He had no idea what to expect once he passed through himself, but he knew that things were going to be far from dull in this new environment. With so much to learn, discover and acquire, he really hoped that Alfia would teach him and Bloom well. Gosh, there are so many people here, Bloom remarked with interest. As the trio got closer to the gates, the livelier the atmosphere seemed to become. Everywhere that can be looked, girls of all heights, shapes and sizes loitered around. Some were greeting friends with varying degrees of energy, some were clustered together in cliques talking about who knows what. Others mingled in pairs or trios. On the other hand, Bloom also observed a good number just ignoring everyone else and making their way through the gates, some with nonchalance as if this was just any other regular day, and others with nervousness as if they were about to be sent to the guillotine. To be honest, it wouldn't be wrong to say that Bloom was feeling nervous herself. Not in the about-to-die kind of way as several of the girls around them were exhibiting, but in the what is going to happen manner. She had no idea what to expect here in Alfia. Will she get along with her classmates and teachers? Will she, Stella and Midoriya be in the same class? Or will they be separated? Are the teachers strict or easygoing? Will the food be good? Will the lessons be difficult to understand, or will it be a walk in the park? She had no answers, and it both excited and worried her. For Midoriya, he too was nervous, but for a completely different reason. As far as he could tell, he was the only boy in a sea of girls. Rightfully, that shouldn't mean anything. He had nothing against girls, or the female gender as a whole. But like Bloom before him, he didn't know what to expect from this female-dominated environment. Will his soon-to-be classmates be nice, or at the least, civil, to him? Or will they scorn him like all of his classmates back in his old world? But then again, he hadn't seen any Bakugo-like characters yet, so perhaps there was hope for him this time round. Midoriya took a deep breath. He mustn't jump to conclusions now. Anything was possible. For now though, he should stick with Stella and Bloom. And perhaps take the moment to appreciate just how appealing Alfia was. Alfia's just as appealing inside as it is outside, he remarked. You betcha, Stella nodded, glancing to the right. Suddenly, her carefree smile dropped. And that's the one ugly thing that spoils the beauty here. Huh. Midoriya started. Over there, Stella pointed. Bloom and Midoriya followed their guide's finger, honing in on a severe-looking middle-aged woman holding a clipboard and quill in front of a queue of freshmen. Who's she? Asked Bloom. She doesn't look that friendly, Midoriya muttered, feeling his nervousness creep back in. That's Griselda, head of Distant, Stella said as if swallowing something sour. Friendliness isn't a word in her dictionary, and she has a stick stuck so far up her non-existent but that I'm surprised it hasn't come out through her mouth yet. Bloom and Midoriya eyed one another uncertainly, even more so when they overheard the conversation taking place between Griselda and the freshman at the start of the queue. Name and place of origin? Eleanor of Delona. The frightened girl shrank under the older woman's unforgiving gaze. I signed up online, and my name should be there. That I don't see it. I hope you know the consequences for people who show up and aren't on the list. Judging by the slight shudder in Eleanor's form, she knew quite well, and my name has just one Y in it. Ah, there it is, Eleanor of Delona, Griselda checked off a box. You may come in. Thank heavens. Eleanor's relief was clear as she quickly hurried past with her luggage, not wanting to spend another moment in the terrifying woman's presence. Next. Stella, you didn't tell us that there was an enrollment list. Bloom hissed, both annoyed and worried. I don't want to be turned into whatever they do to people who aren't on the list. Midoriya shivered. The blonde considered the current predicament. Should have realized this earlier. If it was just Bloom, she could easily pass off as the Princess of Villisto, but… Princess of what? Bloom raised an eyebrow. The Princess of Villisto was supposed to enroll this year, but something happened so she's being homeschooled instead. Bloom could easily take her place. I just won't give the letter the princess tasked me to give to Faragonda about the change of plans, said Stella. But that leaves me without a place, Midoriya pointed at himself. And there is no way I am stealing someone's identity just to avoid trouble, Bloom added firmly. It will only come back to bite us in the future. So what do we do? Asked Midoriya. Bloom glanced at Griselda. You mentioned this Faragonda person before, Stella. And you said she's the headmistress here at Alfia? Is she nice? That's right. And she's way more kinder than Griselda. And in theory, she should have authority over Griselda, am I right? Should be. Then here's what I think we should do, Bloom continued. As much as Griselda makes me nervous, I think we should approach her and push for an audience with Headmistress Faragonda. We should explain our situations and appeal to her to let us enroll. I may not have full certainty about the outcome, but I'm willing to bet my chances that Faragonda will let us stay. I'm all for Bloom-san's plan, Midoriya made clear straight away. Stella agreed that having a plan was better than having none at all. All right, let's do this. The trio nodded. The queue had shortened by then, only 2 freshmen left in line to face Griselda. They quickly took their places at the back. Within moments, it was their turn. The head of DSPN looked up from her clipboard. Her already stern scowl grew even sterner. Ah, look who has decided to grace us with her shining presence back among these walls. Long time no see, Ms. G, Stella smiled airily. Far too soon if you ask me. Griselda's voice dripped with contempt. I haven't the foggiest idea how your parents managed to convince the school board to take you back, especially after that incident last year. They did promise to contribute to the general upkeep of the school for the next 5 years, Stella stuck out her tongue cheekily, and it's going to take a lot more to get rid of me, you know. Midoriya wondered about that little incident. What could have happened? As I should know by now, Griselda sighed exasperatedly. Her attention turned to Bloom standing on Stella's left, and then to Midoriya. He tried his best not to freeze. And who are your friends? As far as I know, only students of Alfia are allowed within Alfia's grounds today. No family or unenrolled friends. And young man, you've come to the wrong place. Red Fountain is across the enchanted forest from here. Bloom swallowed her nerves and put her best firm face forward. We know that, Ms. Griselda. But that's not why we are here with Stella. We would like to meet with Headmistress Faragonda. The older woman raised a thin eyebrow. And your names are? Bloom Davis, from Earth. Midoriya Izuku, also from Earth. Griselda scanned her checklist quickly. Clearly, your names are not on the list. I don't know what exactly you are trying to accomplish here, but you clearly have no business here in Alfia. I will give you this only opportunity. Leave or I will be forced to turn you two into dash. We may be from Earth. Bloom pushed down her growing fear and took a determined step forward, but we have magic powers. That took the head of Disman by surprise. Come again. We have magic powers, Bloom repeated. Me and Midoriya. A likely story dash. Let us show you, Ms. Griselda, the redhead interrupted. Prove that we are not lying to you. By now, a small crowd had gathered around the unfolding scene. Freshmen and returning students watched curiously, wondering about what has gotten the feared or, for some, repulsed Griselda all winded up. Some were staring at Stella, a few at Bloom, and more at Midoriya, naturally not expecting a boy at Alfia. There was nothing but tense silence for a few moments. Very well, Griselda crossed her arms. Show to everyone watching your powers. Bloom nodded. She relaxed herself, closed her eyes, and concentrated. Midoriya did the thing. For a few seconds, nothing happened, and the watching students began whispering to one another. Then, something happened. The clipboard Griselda was holding quivered, and shot out of her hand into the air. Before anyone could comment, it smacked the head of DSPN right across the face, before falling to the ground. Bloom's concentration snapped with a gasp, which disrupted Midoriya's own channeling. Across the courtyard, there was a wishing well. From within came a rumbling sound, followed by the rush of all the water inside it shooting up into the air. It arched over the courtyard, and rained down on a still-stunned Griselda, drenching her completely. Gasps echoed among the spectating students, followed by peals of laughter. Those who feared or hated the older woman reveled in her humiliation and her drowned cat state. Stella had no problems joining in the laughter, while Midoriya and Bloom were both stricken. Many colors flashed across Griselda's face. "Silence," she barked. All laughter abruptly cut off. Griselda took a deep breath. She readjusted her askew spectacles and picked up her clipboard. "You three, follow me to the headmistress office right now." With as much dignity as she could muster while still dripping wet, Griselda turned on her heel and walked off. After a bit of prompting from Stella, Bloom and Midoriya quickly followed. In her office overlooking the entire campus, Headmistress Faragonda, a bespectacled elderly woman of average height with white hair, was going through some final papers before she was to meet the year's incoming batch of students and introduce them into life at Alfia. As she took a sip of her tea, a knock came from the door. "Enter." The door opened. She looked up from her papers. She started at what she saw. "Griselda, what happened? Why are you completely drenched?" "What happened?" the head of Dison bit out. "Were these three Ms. Faragonda?" Faragonda glanced at the trio and sighed. "All right, what did you do this time, Princess Stella?" "It's only the start of the year and dash." "Oh, it's not me, Ms. Faragonda." The blonde stepped forward. "Actually, I want to introduce you to my two friends from Earth, Bloom and Midoriya." The elderly headmistress started again. "Earth?" "That's right." Stella nodded. "And they have magic powers too. Ms. Griselda can vouch for that." Faragonda turned to her deputy. "If by vouch you mean getting hit across the face by my clipboard and having all the water from the courtyard well dumped on you, then yes, I can say that," Griselda sniffed. Faragonda considered this before returning the stern woman. "Go and change, Griselda dear. Let me handle this." "Yes, headmistress." Casting one last scowl at the three teens, Griselda exited the room. Once she was gone, Faragonda turned towards them, face carefully neutral. "Now, I am going to need some context here. Can all three of you explain?" The next 15 minutes were spent retelling the events of the day before yesterday. Stella recounted how Canute and the ghouls accosted her in Solaria, forcing her to flee and somehow ending up on Earth. Bloom added how she found Stella fighting said ogre and ghouls in the park clearing, and the unexpected moment where she conjured the shield of fire which reduced two of the ghouls to ashes. But perhaps the most interesting account was that of Midoriya's. He repeated what he told Vanessa to Faragonda, somehow ending up in Bloom's Earth from his own, and the awakening of his own powers when he blasted the ghouls into a tree with a geyser of water. Then the story shifted the home invasion by a hunting troll and the subsequent chaos of that evening. And to prove that we aren't making it up, you can contact Red Fountain about it. Specialists Riven, Timmy, Riccios, Sky and Brandon can account for the troll, Stella added. By the end of it, Faragonda found herself quite staggered by what she had heard. "Well, I must say that this is truly the most incredible account I've ever heard in all of my years." Bloom and Midoriya glanced at one another, unsure of what was about to happen. Faragonda stood up from her chair and walked over to the expansive window behind her. "You must understand, my dears, that there hasn't been a single magical being on Earth for centuries. Magic simply does not exist there as far as history goes. But then you, Bloom," she turned to the redhead, "out of nowhere, develop powers with an affinity of fire in a moment of sheer panic. This is simply unheard of, let alone conceivable." Faragonda then turned to Midoriya. "And then there is you, Midoriya. You've come tumbling out of a parallel Earth into Bloom's Earth, and awaken powers with a water affinity, again something that shouldn't be possible." The green-haired teen fidgeted. "There's a lot of things we don't know, Faragonda-san. The only thing we do know is that we have magic powers. And therefore, we wanted to meet you," Bloom continued, "to request to enroll in Alfia. I know this is extremely sudden, and it will no doubt be a huge inconvenience for everyone in this school. But we were suddenly gifted with these powers, and almost immediately after we were shown firsthand the dangers to our loved ones by those with evil intentions. All we want to do is MSTR our powers to protect ourselves and the people we love, nothing else. So please, Ms. Faragonda, let us stay in Alfia." The elderly headmistress considered the plea, turning back to look out the window as she pondered her response. Several moments of silence did nothing to ease the tension in the air. Bloom and Midoriya felt increasingly uneasy, uncertainty pooling in their stomachs. You make an extremely compelling case, Bloom. The two teens looked up towards Faragonda, and your reasons are noble too. I can tell, just from your conviction alone, that you are selfless and have an unwavering tenacity, two things that we value greatly here at Alfia. We are always on the lookout for students who carry such morals. She turned to Midoriya. And what about you, my dear? The green-haired teen glanced down at his hands. For me, things changed when I somehow ended up on Bloom-san's Earth. She, her parents and Stella-san are the first people in a very long time who have shown genuine care for my well-being. I was all alone in a different world, but everyone took care of me. And even though I've only known them for 2 days until now, they have done so much for me that I know that it is only right that I do the same in return. If being able to protect them by mastering my new powers is the key, then I am willing to go through hell to do so. Bloom and Stella were immensely moved by Midoriya's reply, though the former noticed something a little darker in the words. But since now wasn't the time or place to bring it up, Bloom filed that little observation away for future reference. Faragonda, meanwhile, smiled kindly. Your heart and virtues are all in the right place, Midoriya. Like Bloom, you too are selfless and tenacious, which as a student are values you are expected to uphold. His eyes widened. Why you mean? Bloom, Midoriya, as Headmistress, I would like to warmly welcome you as students to the Alfia College of Fairies. Just like that, the tension was cut. The trio burst into loud cheers and threw themselves into each other's arms in celebration and euphoria. Faragonda watched the jubilation for several moments, before clapping her hands for their attention. Now, I'll handle the necessary paperwork and ensure that your accommodation is taken care of. Which reminds me, she turned to Stella, are you willing to share your room with Midoriya, Princess Stella? You are currently a single occupancy resident after all. The blonde took a moment to consider, but of course. If anything, we can discuss about fashion combinations, and I get to plan his outfits. Midoriya sweat dropped good-naturedly. Excellent, said Faragonda. I'll let the castle pixies know to make the necessary additions. Also, now that we have established things, it is imperative that you three are made aware of the rules and code of conduct here at Alfia. The mood turned serious in an instant. Firstly, there is to be no usage of magic in the corridors or dormitories. The only time you can use your powers will be in lessons supervised by a professor. I'm emphasizing this because Princess Stella blew up the potions laboratory with unsupervised spell casting last year. Bloom and Midoriya whipped their heads towards Stella. That's what you did? The former asked in disbelief. The blonde was unrepentant. I was just trying to create a new shade of pink, that's all. And while I won't deny that the resulting color was an interesting shade that I highly doubted existed in the color wheel, the safety of the occupants in this castle is paramount, so I expect you three to adhere to it strictly. Yes, Miss Faragonda, Stella grumbled. Second, everyone is to be treated with basic respect. That means from the staff to your fellow students. It is only common courtesy that we cultivate a positive working and learning environment so that everyone can make the best of their time here. Bloom and Midoriya nodded in understanding, while Stella did it half-heartedly, having heard a similar telling by Griselda the year before. Third, keep to the timing. You are expected to be early for your classes, for tardiness reflects badly on the individual. Also, you are not allowed to be out of your dormitories after 8:30 p.m. on weekdays unless there is an emergency. Another round of nods. And finally, fourth, you are to never set foot in the Cloud Tower School for Witches. It is an extremely dangerous place for a fairy to find themselves in, and no punishment dished out here will be as traumatic as what they would do to you if you were caught by them. Again, nods around with a bit nervous swallowing from Bloom and Midoriya. Any student caught breaking the rules will be given a verbal warning for their first offense. Second offense, detention will be issued. The third time, and you will be transformed into a frog for a week. Fourth time, your magic will be suspended for a predetermined length of time based on the severity of the offense. And if you decide that is not enough and break the rules for the fifth time, Ms. Griselda will personally escort you to the gates with your belongings. But I trust you three will never go to such extremes. Bloom and Midoriya nodded fervently. Wonderful, The kind, grandmotherly aura was back again. I'm sure you three will have no trouble settling in and seeing through the year with as little trouble as possible. Now, follow me, my dears. It's time that you meet your fellow schoolmates, and I need to make sure Griselda hasn't terrified them too much. Faragonda stood up from her chair, the three teens following close behind. Leaving her office behind, the small group passed through several flights of stairs and crossed a large atrium before stepping back out into the late morning sun. A bit forwards, Midoriya could see Griselda dry and wearing a different set of clothes addressing the crowd of students before her. The stern woman turned around, spotting them instantly. Ladies, here comes your headmistress. Give her your utmost attention. Faragonda chuckled. Oh, there's no need to be so uptight, everyone. I hope Ms. Griselda here hasn't ruffled your feathers too much so far. The head of DSPN looked a little put out at that. Welcome to Alfia, everyone. I am your headmistress, Ms. Faragonda, Alfia alumni and former fairy godmother. Now before we continue with the orientation, I would like to introduce to you all these two new students from Earth. The students started whispering to one another, others craning their necks to see properly. Namely Ms. Bloom Davis. The redhead waved with a smile. And the first male student in Alfia's history, Mr. Midoriya Izuku. His wave to the crowd was a lot more nervous, since his presence seemed to draw more noise, ranging between confusion, disbelief and excitement from the students. I hope everyone here will treat them cordially just as they had promised they would do for you all, Faragonda continued. Now follow me, everyone. The headmistress turned around and started back towards the atrium. Bloom and Midoriya followed, leading the crowd of students. As she led the crowd into the atrium, Faragonda resumed her welcoming speech. Many of you will fight against the forces of evil and become guardian fairies. Some of you will grant wishes to the worthy and others will ascend to become rulers of your realm. Every one of you is a unique individual with your own powers, strengths, and abilities. You have come from different backgrounds and origins, but when you come here, our mission is still the same. To help you each become the very best you can be, Faragonda and Stella said at the same time, the latter muttering it cheekily. She says that all the time, Stella confided to Bloom and Midoriya. Of course, you are expected to put in your best effort at all times, and to help others with their problems and vice versa, Faragonda continued, but I think I have bored you long enough with my droning, so I'll leave you all to settle in. Griselda clapped her hands for attention. All right, everyone, it is time to disperse to your respective dormitories. You have the rest of today off, but do remember to adhere to curfew and that classes begin at 8 o'clock sharp tomorrow. Your timetables will be delivered to your dormitories in half an hour. The crowd began to disperse, but Faragonda had some parting words. Let's make this a fruitful year, everyone. Oh, and don't forget to make use of every available opportunity to connect with your winks. Finished with her speech, she gave Bloom and Midoriya one last nod, before walking off with Griselda. Stella turned to the two teens. Come on guys, let's go meet our new roommates. As the trio walked down a corridor, Bloom had a question come to mind. Hey Stella, what did Ms. Faragonda mean when she said, connect with your winks? Your winks is made up of 3 things, Stella replied, counting each off. First, it's your magical core, which fuels your powers and strength. Second, it's what guides you as an individual. And finally, it's what makes you who you are. Got it? I believe so, Bloom shrugged, Midoriya doing the same. It's either you get it or you don't, Stella replied. As for you two, you've clearly got it. They climbed up a flight of stairs and crossed another corridor. After a few moments, they arrived at a set of ornate double doors painted a dark green. On the glass pane of one of the doors was a large piece of paper with a set of names on it. Double Room 1. Princess Stella of Solaria and Midoriya Izuku of Earth. Double Room 2. Flora of Linfia and Bloom Davis of Earth. Double Room 3. Musa of the Harmonic Nebula and Tekna of Zenith. Oh goody, Stella gushed. We've got different roommates this year. Let's hope they're better than the ones I got last year. No sense of humor, the lot. Bloom pushed the door open and they stepped into a common space, furnished with a television, a sofa, a couple of lounge chairs and a coffee table. Midoriya felt it was quite homely, he could get used to this. Bloom put Kiko down to let him explore. The common space had 3 doors branching into the sleeping quarters. They approached the doors that bore Stella and Midoriya's name on it first. Opening it, a large sunlit room greeted them. Natural light shone in through the windows that completely took up one of the walls. The other walls were painted a soft cream color, the floor blanketed by a white carpet. There were 2 queen-sized beds opposite one another, separated by a large makeup dresser. At the foot of each bed was a desk, and taking up the last wall was a walk-in wardrobe. They've redecorated and expanded the room. Stella noted with a satisfied smile, I quite like it. Same here, Midoriya agreed, going towards one of the beds and sitting down on it. The mattress was quite soft, the sheets smooth to the touch. Stella snapped her fingers, and all her bags and luggage popped into existence out of thin air, coming to a landing by the other bed. We can sort out our stuff later, she said, let's go check out Bloom's room for now. They left the room and crossed the common space to the door directly opposite, which bore Bloom's name. She opened the door and stepped in. Stella and Midoriya had barely entered when a loud shriek reverberated over the walls. Bloom felt something squirm under her foot, and she quickly stepped back, whatever it was retracting away from her. On closer inspection, it appeared to be a vine of some sort. Following its length, it led to a plant that had something resembling a humanoid face on it. It was nursing its injured vine while making groan-like noises. Oh, sorry. The redhead was unsure how to react to a plant that was behaving so humanly. Oh, pardon me, came a voice from inside the room. I just arrived, and I haven't sorted my things yet. A tan girl with long flowing brown hair came up to the trio. She had a curvaceous form, and wore a green off-shoulder blouse and pink knee-length skirt with strawberry patterns. The plant mimics human behavior? Midoriya asked amazedly. It's one of my creations, the girl nodded. It hasn't gotten there yet, but hopefully I'm able to get it to talk one of these days. I'm hoping that if plants are able to communicate with us, deforestation will be drastically reduced. It's worth a shot, especially if it can save just one life. The trio eyed one another. The girl's passion was intense. Oh, where are my manners? She blushed in realization. I'm Flora. You must be Bloom and Midoriya, right? I saw you being introduced by Ms. Faragonda. Yeah, that's us, Bloom smiled. Wow, I can't believe I'm sharing a dorm with the 2 famous Earth students. Everyone turned at the unfamiliar voice. Standing outside the room was a lean girl with short magenta-colored hair, decked in a sleeveless green and purple tracksuit with matching high-top sneakers. Midoriya observed that she spoke with something akin to a Nordic accent. Hi, my name's Tekna. Hey, I'm Bloom. Midoriya. I'm Flora. I'm Stella. Nice to meet you, the blonde came forth. Tekna stared at her for a moment, before realization set in. You are quite infamous. I've heard about you as well. That's the word around here. All eyes turned to the new arrival, an East Asian girl with short dark hair tied in pigtails, dressed in a single-shoulder CRP top and baggy jeans. Bloom observed a boyish aura about her. Hey all, I'm Musa. By the way, just a quick request to Bloom and Midoriya, let us know ahead of time if you're about to whack us across the face or drench us with water so that we can dodge. And Stella, if you're going to blow things up, do warn us so we can get out of the way from ground zero. The assembled group chuckled, though Midoriya got a bit flustered. It was an accident, I swear. Stella was also on the defensive. It was in the name of fashion. I have no regrets. Musa, stifling her laughter, came forwards and threw an arm over Midoriya's shoulder. Relax ya? I'm just kidding with ya. I'm curious though, were you successful in creating that shade of pink? Asked Tekna curiously. Almost, but it didn't turn out right in the end. Stella perked back up at her dorm mate's interest, but when I do get it right, it's going to become the national color of Solaria. Whatever banter that was happening was suddenly interrupted by a frantic cry coming from Bloom and Flora's room. The group rushed in, entering to a sight of Kiko being dangled upside down by his back leg by the same plant Bloom had stepped on earlier. Bad plant. Flora ordered sternly, put him down right now. The admonished plant reluctantly released the rabbit, who bounded over to Bloom for safety. It's okay, Flora, the redhead reassured. It's not the plant's fault. I think Kiko's hungry and thought it was his next meal. True enough, one of the vines looked as if several nibbles had been taken off of it. Oh, in that case, Flora picked up a soil-filled planter. She waved her hand over the soil, releasing a shower of sparkles. From the bare soil sprouted 3 rows of carrots. Here you go, little bunny, eat up. She placed the carrots in front of a curious Kiko, who sniffed it cautiously. Deeming it to actually be his favorite food, Kiko dived mouth-first into his meal. You know, Tekna commented, watching the rabbit eat makes me realize just how hungry I am. Yeah, same here, Musa chimed in. Well then, maybe we should take a trip down to Magix? There must a pizzeria or 2 there, Bloom suggested. Sounds great. Yeah, we should. A short time later, the group of new acquaintances had passed through the front gates and were waiting for the Magix-bound hoverbus. I've only read a few articles about Earth before, Tekna revealed, and they don't really say much about it, only that no magic exists there and the last magical being died centuries before. Yeah, there's nothing really interesting about Earth, Bloom shrugged, at least, not when compared to Magix anyway. How so? Asked Musa. Well, the vehicles still use wheels, that's one thing, and the technology here is way more advanced than what we have back home. Like we have touchscreens, but things like holographic screens and interfaces are still only the stuff of science fiction, Bloom replied. Life on Earth is kinda boring if I want to be honest. Wow, they don't mention these in the article databases, Tekna nodded thoughtfully. The transportation in the Harmonic Nebula also use wheels too, said Musa. We like to maintain an old-world style of living. Midoriya wished he had a notebook on hand to write this down. There was just so much information to learn. And he had so many questions too. At the same moment, the hoverbus arrived. As the group were boarding, Bloom realized something and smacked her forehead. Now I know what I forgot to do yesterday. What's the matter? Asked Flora. I still don't have any money on me yet, Bloom replied. Stella, is there a way for me to connect to my savings account on Earth? Of course. Don't you worry about it, darling, the blonde patted her shoulder. We'll just make a quick detour to the Magix Central Bank. They'll know what to do. Bloom relaxed, and Stella paid for 3 tickets herself, Bloom and Midoriya, while the others paid for their own. Grabbing seats in the compartment, the doors hissed shut, and the bus was on the Stella-san, I've been thinking, Midoriya said, it's not right of me to keep relying on you and Bloom-san for money. I think during the weekends and holidays, I better pick up a part-time job to keep myself financially stable. Do you know if any place is hiring? As the blonde considered his request, Tekna turned to him. Don't you have a savings account too? You're from the same planet as Bloom. I do, but it's complicated, Midoriya twiddled his thumbs. Why? Asked Flora. You see, the Earth I am from is not the same Earth where Bloom-san is from, Midoriya explained. Some might say I am from a parallel universe. Parallel universes? I've heard about that too, Tekna commented. It's the theory that multiple universes coexist within the same plane of existence. Sometimes, these universes stay separate from one another. Other times, they come into contact, with varying degrees of consequences. The similarities and differences between the different universes can vary too. How did you end up in Bloom's Earth then, Midoriya? Asked Musa curiously. He inwardly flinched. Every time someone asked that, he would be reminded of his suicide attempt and the events leading up to that fateful moment. Steeling himself together, Midoriya gave his prepared response. It was a strange thing. I was just going about my business, and then I tripped over the uneven pavement. As I pitched forward, the ground opened up into this void of colors and lights. All I remember was falling through it, and then somehow being spit out of it into Bloom's Earth. Interesting, Tekna rubbed her chin. Sounds really surreal, Musa remarked. It was, Midoriya nodded. So do you have anything, Stella-san? Oh, don't you worry about that, the blonde waved reassuringly. The shops in Magix are always on the lookout for part-time staff. We can take a look around after we eat. What are your specialties? Here, the green-haired teen thought hard. Well, that I'm decent at baking and cooking, since I always used to do them with my mom. Stella nodded. so something food-related. I think we can work with that. But Midoriya, Flora interjected, you mentioned your mom, but you're here and… The green-haired teen turned somber. Yes, my mom is all alone back in my world. To be honest, I have no clue what has happened since I disappeared. I only know she must be worried sick about what happened to me. Bloom gripped his shoulders supportively. I'm so sorry, Midoriya, Flora whispered sympathetically. It must be really difficult. It is, said Teen nodded, but it's not as if I'm alone. I have Bloom-san, her parents, Stella-san, and that if you're willing, you guys too. Musa smiled brightly. Of course. Even though we all just met today, I can foresee us become the best of friends. And we'll help you find a way to get back to your world, Tekna promised. I'm sure we can use technology in some manner to create a connecting pathway. Midoriya let a relieved grin stretch his lips. Thanks you guys. Bloom pulled her hands away. So, to keep our moods up, can you tell us about Zenith, Tekna? It sounds really cool. Tekna perked up and began delving into her home planet, going into great lengths to describe how technology and ingenious minds of the people have made Zenith into what it is today, while the bus continued down the road towards Magix itself. Alighting at the city's main station, the group exited the building into the bustling streets of Magix. It was just as busy as the day before, hover vehicles jam-packing the roads, people hurrying up and down the pavement going about their business, and shops open to customers to sell their wares. All right, so Bloom, Midoriya and I are going to the bank first, Stella told the group. Tekna, you have my number. Text me when you guys have found a decent pizzeria. Got it. The group then split into two, Stella, Midoriya and Bloom going up north, and the rest heading south. How far is the bank from here? Asked the redhead. Not too far, we're only a few blocks away from the financial district. The central bank's right smack in the middle of it. Stella replied. Indeed, within a few minutes, the trio had reached the outskirts of the financial district, distinguished by the towering skyscrapers and people wearing business suits or other similar style of clothing. Cutting across a few roads and walking through a tree-lined avenue, they arrived at a large building that reminded Bloom greatly of the New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street. The design was clearly inspired by the classical architecture of the iconic building, but it had a modern, futuristic twist to it so that it blended with the surrounding skyscrapers. The trio walked up the marble steps, passed through the towering columns, and entered a large circular room with a glass dome spanning the entire circumference. It was alive with activity, people walking or running about, patrons in queues waiting for their turn, and the occasional pixie flying overhead. The trio joined a queue, which passed in less time than what Bloom or Midoriya had expected given such a busy crowd. When it was finally their turn, they came to face a middle-aged woman with pointy ears. How may I help you today? Hi, I would like to open 2 bank accounts, one for each of my friends, Stella replied. My friend Bloom already has a savings account on her home planet of Earth. Can you help us link the accounts together? Certainly, the woman turned to Bloom. Full name and address, please? Bloom Davis, 10922 Palmer Road, Gardenia, United States of America. Give me a quick moment. The teller typed some symbols in and touched a few screens on the holographic interface. Ah, found you. A bit more processing and several confirmation questions later, Bloom was issued a brand new credit card linked to her Magix banking account. It was now Midoriya's turn. Full name and address, please? Midoriya Izuku. Just list Bloom's address, Stella told him, sensing his uncertainty. Right. Midoriya Izuku, 10922 Palmer Road. The teller added in the details and tapped a few buttons on the interface. Sir, you will need 5 Ronios to keep the account open. Transfer the amount from my account, Bloom interjected before Midoriya could so much as open his mouth. The teller tapped some more buttons and slid her finger across the interface. Almost immediately after, a brand new card was ejected from the small printer by her side. Here you go, sir. Midoriya took the card with both hands reverently. He smiled gratefully at the teller. Thank you. You're most welcome. Is there anything else I can help you with? Stella took over. Nope, that would be all. Thanks for the great service. Concluding their business, The trio left the bank behind and stepped back into the bustling city. At the same moment, a buzzing came from Stella's pocket. It must be from Tekna. She pulled out her mobile phone and tapped the screen. Sweet, they found one not too far from where we were. How far is it? Asked Midoriya. Let's see. Stella tapped a button, and a holographic projection flickered into existence over the phone. It was a map of the financial district, a blinking dot indicating their position outside of the Magix central bank. A line shot out from the dot, meandering through the streets until it came to a stop at a shopping arcade, which was also not far from the Magix main station. According to the map, it should take us about 15 minutes by walking. Stella canceled the projection and pocketed her phone. Let's get going, you guys. I'm starting to get really hungry. After bypassing the main station and cutting across a few more traffic lights, the trio arrived at the designated shopping arcade. It was open-aired, like the shopping district they visited the day before, and just as crowded. I hope the pizza is good, said Bloom. I read a few reviews of the place, Stella replied. It's not too bad. As the two girls continued their chat, Midoriya was looking around languidly, merely watching the life happening around them. They reached an intersection just a few shops away from the pizzeria. As they crossed it, something caught Midoriya's eye. It had moved away out of sight before he could get a good look at it, but it was large and lumbering. He stopped in his tracks. Large and lumbering, like an ogre would be. Could it? Hey Midoriya. You okay? Stella's voice snapped him from his thoughts. He quickly realized he had put some distance between himself and his two friends, who were already at the entrance of the pizzeria. I know. It's nothing. Wait up. He hurried after the two girls, hoping that the slightly unsettling feeling in his stomach was just him being hungry. Hey guys. Over here. Musa called over to the entering trio from her place at a 6-seater table by the window. Stella, Bloom and Midoriya came over and sat down on the 3 empty chairs. So did everything go well? Musa asked. Perfectly, Stella nodded. Bloom and Midoriya are all set. We actually just got here ourselves, Flora revealed. We spent a bit looking around for any food and beverage places that were hiring part-time staff. I've compiled the list together and narrowed it down to these 3 choices, based on Midoriya's specialty. Tekna added, fishing out a device that appeared to be her mobile phone. Here, have a look. She passed the phone to Midoriya, who scanned the listed names. Magno Patisserie and Cafe. The Teaspoon Cafe. Miriam's Everyday Cakes and Pastries. The last one had a nice ring to it. It sounded small and family-run, not commercialized like the other 2. He could consider this. Miriam sounds nice, said the teen, returning the device. Maybe we can visit the place after we eat? Sounds like a plan, Stella nodded. Menus were opened, and choices were discussed. Midoriya and Bloom recognized a few varieties from Earth, although the ingredients mostly defied their understanding. Eventually, 3 pizzas types were decided, and the order placed. Once the waiter had collected back the menus and walked off, Bloom raised her glass of water. I think we should toast to the beginnings of a strong friendship and a great academic year ahead. Cheers. Meanwhile, just a few shops away from the pizzeria, Canute was lumbering down the street, oblivious to the stares he was getting from the citizens of Magix. While being an enchanted city, it wasn't often that the people saw an ogre taking up much of the pavement on a busy day. Canute did a double take when he reached the pizzeria. Through the window, he could vaguely recognize the all-too-familiar face of Princess Stella, and the 2 humans who fought him back on Earth, laughing and chattering away. It's them. Gotta get it right this time. As quickly as his heavy footsteps could, he ducked into a nearby alley away from the main foot traffic. He fished out a phone from his pocket and dialed in a number. It took 2 rings for the other caller to pick up. This better be worth it, Canute, or else I'll turn you into something your non-existent brain could never have imagined. It's Princess Stella and her 2 Earth friends. They're in Magix, your evilness. Meet me at Witch's Alley. Good, at least you managed to get it done properly this time. The call ended. Canute put the phone away and dashed further into the alley and disappearing from sight. While trouble was beginning to brew, the group of students were discussing other troubles they had on their mind as they ate their way through the pizzas, namely the start of lessons the next day. I don't think I'm going to get used to waking up so early, Musa complained as she took a bite from her slice. I just hope we aren't going into the hard stuff right away, Stella added. But aren't you repeating the year? Tekna raised an eyebrow. True, the blonde admitted, but that doesn't mean it makes it any easier. While the conversation continued, Bloom took out her phone to check if her parents had contacted her earlier or if anything important had cropped up. She pressed the power button, but for some reason, the screen remained dark. Nothing she subsequently did made it work, and she swore she had charged it the night before and hadn't used it since. Something wrong? Asked Midoriya. My phone isn't working, Bloom replied. Here, let me have a look, Tekna offered. I specialize in communication devices. Bloom handed over her phone. I love taking these apart, Tekna said mostly to herself. She pulled the back cover off the phone and examined the parts. She suddenly snorted. What's the matter? Asked Flora. Even though the design of this phone bears some semblance to the ones I've used before, Tekna giggled, the technology is pretty much prehistoric. Bloom was taken aback. But it's the newest model? From Earth, it may be, Stella corrected. I think the magical energy in Magix and the disparity in technology caused your phone electronics to fry. Great, Bloom sighed. How am I supposed to contact my parents now? There's a transdimensional phone booth you can utilize. I think it's just a few shops down and behind, Musa suggested. You can use the credit card you received to activate it. Thanks, Musa. Bloom nodded as she got up from her seat. I'll see you guys later. As she left the pizzeria, the conversation shifted again. So I've been meaning to ask Midoriya. Tekna turned her attention to said teen. How is your Earth different from Bloom's? Midoriya swallowed the crust before responding. Everything is pretty much the same, except for the people. You see, most people have some kind of power, or as they are called, quirks. You mean like a specialty? Asked Flora. Like how I specialize in nature? Something like that, Midoriya nodded. What kind of quirks are there? Asked Musa. Boundless, just about anything you can think of, Midoriya made clear. Some are able to control the natural elements, like fire, water, and earth. Others are able to manipulate the human senses, like sight and hearing. Some even take on the forms of anthropomorphic animals such as dogs, cats, lions, or tigers, for example, and inherit the animal's strengths. Wow, I didn't know Earth humans have evolved to such an advanced state. Musa was impressed. Then what's your quirk, Midoriya? Asked Tekna. I'm sure it must be really cool. The green-haired teen scratched his cheek, once again in an uncomfortable position. Well, you see. Bloom had no trouble finding the transdimensional phone booth, with the added benefit being that it was currently unoccupied. She closed the door behind her and inserted her Magix credit card into the slot. She dialed in her home phone number and activated the call. It took a few rings, and the call then connected. Hello. Hey Mom, it's me, Bloom. Bloom. Oh, it's so good to hear from you, honey. How have things been? Pretty good, I have to say, Mom. Managed to enroll with Midoriya into Alfia, though at the cost of someone's dignity. What happened? You see, Alfia has a head of DSPN, Ms. Griselda. She was doubtful about us having powers and was about to turn us away, so we demonstrated them in front of everyone. The thing is, it involved her getting smacked by her clipboard and drenched to the bone. Oh dear. I hope she didn't give you any problems. No, it's fine. She just brought us to the headmistress, Ms. Farragonda, who was kind enough to listen to our situation. She deemed us worthy of being students at Alfia. Oh honey, that's fantastic. Did you meet anyone else today? In the happy mood shared between mother and daughter, the latter didn't notice the shadows entering the alley she was in. We did. 3 other girls that are our dorm mates, actually, Bloom replied. We're actually out in Magix having pizza. That's lovely, dear. Now, I won't keep you from your new friends. You keep yourself and Midoriya safe, okay? I will. I'll talk to you soon. Say hi to Dad for me. Sure thing. You take care, honey. You as well, Mom. The connection cut, and the call ended. Bloom put the receiver back into place and turned to step out of the booth. Closing the door behind her, she quickly realized she was no longer alone. W a dash? I see it as so you don't actually have a quirk? Musa repeated. Midoriya nodded. It must have been really difficult for you, Flora sympathized. In a number of ways. Tekna, on the other hand, had a calculating look. Something doesn't add up. You say that you don't have a quirk, with the extra toe joint and all, but yet you demonstrated a power that got Griselda completely soaked. I saw the entire thing. No matter how I try to rationalize it, there's a discrepancy in your account. Midoriya wasn't sure if he was not completely offended by Tekna's blunt questioning of his life story. Well, it's dash. Suddenly, he froze up, his eyes turning glassy. What's the matter, Midoriya? Asked Stella. He suddenly shot up to his feet, knocking his chair backwards. The loud clatter made everyone in the pizzeria turn their heads towards the group's table. Something's wrong. Without further explanation, he bolted out of the restaurant and down the street. The girls quickly stood up from their seats. That will pay when we get back. Stella called out to a waiter, before she joined her friends in running after Midoriya. Who are you? Bloom felt a deep chill run down her spine, not helped by the menacing aura the new arrivals were radiating. Canute the ogre was accompanied by 3 girls who appeared to be slightly older than she was. The first one, she guessed was the leader, had pointed features, pale skin, and long silver hair tied in a high ponytail. She was dressed in form-fitting clothes that were of a dark teal color, matching her heavy makeup and polished nails. The second girl had long brown hair, dressed in loose dark purple clothing with matching equally heavy makeup. The last one had faded dark blue hair that looked as if it had been electrified. Her clothes were a maroon color and she was the only one in heels. Who are we? That's a bit personal, don't you think? The one with electrified hair snarked. Bloom held her ground despite the churning in her stomach. She sensed nothing but trouble with these individuals. But we're feeling kind tonight, so we'll tell you that we are witches from Cloud Tower, otherwise known as the Trix, the one with brown hair continued mockingly. And now that we've done our part, I think you should return the favor, and tell us where is your friend Stella? The leader demanded. Bloom narrowed her eyes, as if I'd tell you fuckers anything. You're clearly up to no good. The brunette witch snorted, this pathetic fairy has brains, I'll give her that. Too bad she doesn't know how to use it properly. Icy? She turned to the silver-haired witch. Clearly, Icy grinned savagely, let's teach her real quick why she should learn when to listen to our orders. The witch stretched out her hands, the air turning frigidly cold. A blast of ice shot out from her hands and hurtled straight towards Bloom. It was coming too fast, leaving her with no time to defend herself. No! The redhead was suddenly pushed out of the way, tumbling to the ground. There was a shriek, cut off by ice crackling over. Fighting off the ache in her body, Bloom picked herself up and turned around. She bit back a gasp. Midoriya had been the one to push her out of the incoming ice, only to get encased in a frigid prison. His hands were still outstretched, mouth open in mid-shriek, legs frozen in mid-run. What's this? The brunette witch raised an eyebrow. It's the boy who was with the redhead girl and Stella. Your evilnesses, said Canute. Really? Icy smirked. Well, that's one idiot taken care of, and we haven't even gotten started yet. Burning fury ignited from within Bloom's heart. These 3 witches will pay for their treachery. Midoriya. We heard you scream a dash. A thundering of footsteps. Stella, Flora, Musa and Tekna burst into the scene. Their eyes widened at what they saw. What the F dash? Stella swore. It's her. Princess Stella. Canute pointed. Finally, the guest of the hour has arrived. The wild-haired witch grinned evilly. What did you do to him? Stella shrieked. He tried to be the hero and got himself frozen. Icy shrugged. Quite pitiful really, but not important. Humans don't last long encased in ice, so I suggest you hand over your ring, Stella, she stretched out a hand, before your friend dies of frostbite. Stella growled, over my dead body you beach. Magic winks. Magic winks. Bloom watched with wide eyes as her new friends were shrouded in a bright light. Time seemed to suddenly slow as they transformed before her. Flashes of sunlight turned Stella's clothes into her orange CRP top, armbands, low-cut shorts and knee-length boots, her three-pointed blue wings sprouting on her back. Flower petals swirled around Flora, turning her blouse and skirt into a shoulderless, one-piece dress of fuchsia and orchid colors, pink fingerless gloves running to her elbows, matching ankle-length boots, and a green choker with a four-petaled flower pendant. Green, leaf-shaped wings sprouted with a burst of petals. Musa danced as flashing squares resembling disco lights turned her baggy jeans and red top into single-shouldered ruby-red dress with a translucent, red-hued midriff and matching knee-length wedge boots. Thin blue wings shined into existence, along with matching headphones and ribbons on her arms that were of a purple color. A glowing green grid whirred into life over Tekna's form, transforming her tracksuit into a lavender bodysuit, with powder blue sleeves covering down to her fingertips and matching knee-high heeled boots. The same grid fitted her head with a lilac helmet with a green tear-shaped brooch on it, and produced green square-shaped bars that expanded into glider that served as her wings. Now in their fairy forms, the four girls hovered between their friends and the witches. "Oh, look at that," Icy crooned. "The little fairies have come to stop us bad witches from taking what is ours." She then turned to Canute. "Canute! Crush them to fairy dust." The ogre roared and hurtled towards the girls. Digital web. Tekna produced a rope of green light and wrapped it around Canute, immobilizing him in a sphere of digital energy. Sonic blast. Musa clapped her hands together. A pair of glowing speakers materialized from thin air and blasted the ogre with deafening rock music so loud that it shook both him and the street. Flora did not hesitate to join in on the offensive. Ivy rope. She blew out a gust of air. Stream of shining flowers swirling out towards the ground directly below Canute. A vine burst from the concrete, wrapping around him like a snake. It then pummeled the trapped, screaming ogre wildly, throwing him against the walls of buildings and the ground, before tossing him into a pile of garbage, the impact knocking him out. "Ugh, what a useless lout," Icy groaned. Her attention turned to the four fairies. "All right, playtime's over." She summoned a wall of ice shards and sent them hurtling towards the fairies. Stella quickly expanded her scepter and swung it down, releasing a wave of light that intercepted the shards, dissipating them in a burst of sparkles. The Bloom, we can really use your help here." Stella called out to the redhead, flying out of the way of another blast of ice. Bloom took one look at the ongoing battle, and then to the frozen Midoriya, whose skin was beginning to turn flush from the frigid ice. She knew right away that she could no longer just stand there. Her friends need her help. And fast. So she concentrated, going deep within herself to find that power that had aided her up till now. Magic winks. Bloom was immediately shrouded in light. Fire burned through her clothes, turning into a sky-blue turtlenecked CRP top with a golden jewel at the center, matching miniskirt, detached sleeves and ankle-length boots. A three-rounded tiara flashed onto her forehead, and cyan and light teal wings sprouted from her back. As the light faded, she didn't stop to admire her new form. Shakily taking flight for the first time, Bloom channeled her power to her hands, creating a ball of fire that pulsed wildly. With a shout, she fired it at the three witches. It exploded, throwing the trio backwards. They were quick to recover, the wild-haired witch taking the stage. "How about a little lightning strike?" Magenta lightning burst from her hands. Tekna immediately reacted. "Everyone behind me!" The girls crowded behind her as she raised her forearm. A lavender shield materialized and intercepted the lightning, crackling wildly. Bloom quickly fired another fireball at the witches, cutting off the lightning as they dodged. "Gird out enough. I've had it with your games." Icy growled, curling her hands together. "From the depths of primordial space, I summon a box with a frigid embrace. Bring me the power to the palm of my hand and unleash it at my command." The air around the witches turned frigid, and snow began to gather around her hands. Stella, seeing the imminent danger, quickly raised her scepter. "By the magic of Solaria, get me and my friends out of here." The swirling snowstorm blasted out from Icy's hands, just as Stella's scepter began to glow. A flash of light blanketed the alley, taking the girls and a frozen Midoriya with it just as the snow bombarded their previous positions, covering the alley in ice. It took a few moments for the three witches to realize that they had failed. They got away? Icy screamed, "No! Not again!" Several streets away, the girls and a still frozen Midoriya reappeared in a flash of light. Stella shrunk her scepter and slid it back on her finger. "Quick! We need to thaw him out," said Bloom. The redhead quickly channeled her fire into the ice, slowly melting it. Musa helped by producing sound waves that cracked the ice bit by bit. It took several minutes, but they were able to pull Midoriya out of his frozen prison. Exposed to the heat, the green-haired teen suddenly came to, eyes flying open with a sharp intake of air. "Don't worry, you're safe now. We managed to get away," Bloom soothed. Thanks, why did you guys?" Midoriya's teeth chattered as he shivered uncontrollably. "We've got to get him back to Alfia," said Tekna. But the pizza?" "Ah, right," Stella snapped her fingers. A flash of light enveloped her, and she was back in her civilian clothes. "You girls stay here and keep him warm, I'll go handle the bill." Some time later, a hoverbus pulled up at the gates of Alfia. A still shivering Midoriya was helped off by Musa and Flora, the rest of the group following behind them. "It's so late," Bloom remarked. "I hope we don't get into trouble for this." "Relax, will you?" Stella replied. "We totally had a valid reason." "Yeah," Musa supplied. "It's not our fault that we got attacked." The gates lowered, allowing the group in. They had barely taken a few paces when a stern voice interrupted them. "Hold it right there. Do you lot have any idea what time it is? Curfew was an hour ago." Griselda and Farragonda came up to meet them. "We're sorry, Ms. Griselda," said Bloom sincerely, "but we were attacked in Magix." Attacked, the head of DSPLN started at this. "By three witches from Cloud Tower, who called themselves the Trix," Flora continued. "One of them, Icy was her name, I think hit Midoriya with a blast of ice, freezing him completely. They were after Stella's ring." "Oh dear!" Farragonda grew concerned. "Bring Midoriya to the infirmary immediately and ask for Nurse Ophelia. She'll handle this. After that, be off to bed. You all need to be in time for classes tomorrow." "Yes, Ms. Farragonda." Watching the group leave, Griselda turned to her boss. "An altercation already on the first day? We can't just let this go." "I know, Griselda," Farragonda sighed, "but Headmistress Griffin is not likely to take much action given her indifference towards fairies. We can only hope that this is a one-time issue and that these three witches will not attempt their foolish actions again." Despite her best efforts to sound firm, the elderly headmistress knew deep down that the coming days will not be smooth. For now, they could only hope for the best.